You're good. You're good.
We're recording. Nick, you're recording. Nick, Jack. Roll. 5.
Hello and welcome to Automate Live. I am Jana Martin, the Media Production Manager at the Association for Advancing Automation. We're so excited to be kicking off Automate this year here in McCormick Place at Chicago. First of all, before we get into the show and what's going to happen, I have to introduce my guest, my co-host this morning, Aaron Prather. The first time I'm going to be publicly announcing you as our Director of Market Intelligence. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're so glad to have you here on the desk, but we're also so glad to have you at A3.
Yep.
Can you just tell us, why did you take this position? What excited you about this?
This is sort of almost like where I should have always ended up kind of thing. And it was just an opportunity came up with the A3 team, and the opportunity to join as the Director of Market Intelligence just seemed like a natural fit. I love this industry so much. I love telling the stories of this industry, and this position is going to allow me to actually dive into the data, dive into the analytics, and really help this industry grow. So I am sort of almost at a loss of words of how fast this has happened, but I am looking so forward to working with you and the rest of the A3 team and starting at Automate. You couldn't ask for a better start for a
It's
job.
kind of a big start.
Yeah.
We're so excited though. I mean, we're all data nerds. We live in this technology world. And so I'm very excited to see what we get to share from all of your work and your great team. Of course, Alex Coleman, Drew,
Yep.
Alex Shkaney, everyone there has already been working. There's already so many incredible reports available on the automate.org website.
Yes.
And we're just gonna make it bigger and better and more accessible.
Absolutely. I've already been working with the team. There is some amazing reports coming, guys. So make sure that you're just listening in on everything that A3 is talking about, because we actually have some great reports in the pipeline and really looking forward to sharing those with everyone.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you and all that after we kind of preview the show, because I know we're all here at the show. Everyone's excited. We haven't been in Chicago for 2 years. So just to kick things off, right now, every morning at 9 a.m., there'll be a keynote in the main ballroom. So go to the automateshow.com website and check that out. Of course, every day we're going to have experts in the conference. So if you're registered for the conference, head upstairs. There's a really full schedule from anywhere: AI, motion control, robotics, etc. The exhibit hall right here, both the North and the South Hall open at 10 a.m. each day, 10 to 5 today on Monday. And then tomorrow we have the Humanoid Robot Forum, which I know you're probably excited about. You've been to a Humanoid Robot Forum or two in your day. So we're so excited that we're here. We're going to have Boston Dynamics, NVIDIA, Neura, Aptronic, and so many other incredible speakers. There's the Startup Challenge. There's the Empowerment Forum. There's the Engelberger Awards. Honestly, I just can't go through it all.
There's the VEX competition just on the other side. If you actually, folks, if you're hearing some cheering, there are 100 kids just on the other side of this camera that we're looking at that are doing a VEX competition. It is amazing how many things are going on right now.
Yeah, all week they'll be running those competitions, kids groups every day doing that. So make sure to check that out. I'm also personally very excited about that. So Aaron, when you look at this show and like the whole big picture, all the different technologies, the automation space, why are you excited about Automate this year?
I mean, if you walk this floor, you are going to see everything in our industry.
Yeah.
You're going to see the robotics, you're going to see the automation, you're going to see the sensors, but ultimately you're going to see the people that make all this happen. And that's what makes Automate so amazing, is you are going to be able to network like crazy. You just listed off all these different ways to join in and do this thing. I mean, not only are you going to see some really cool technologies, you're going to meet some really cool people, and that is the beauty of Automate.
It is. It is. So when we think about the automation industry right now, and we're always like trying to solve issues, solve problems, when you're out there, because you are out there in the world at all these events, what are you hearing right now? What are some of the struggles that automation leaders are kind of trying to tackle right now?
I think we're entering an inflection point in our industry where for the longest time, it was always the bigger players, the Fords, the GMs, the Amazons. They really drove automation forward in this country and across the globe. The whole thing is now it's the small and medium guys' turns. They're the ones that are stepping up. That's why we're going to have over 50,000 attendees at this
That's right.
event. And it's because those small and medium guys are starting to look for solutions.
Yeah.
They know they need to automate. They know they need to add robotics, and it's going to be like what are some of the questions they're asking
Right.
is, and what I'm hearing from a lot of them is they're just trying to figure out, where do they start, how do they get moving on this? Is robots as a service something that's available to them? So they're starting their journey, and I think that's great that they're starting it here at Automate, where there's a community that really wants to help them.
Yeah.
But the question that they're asking are those baseline ones of, how do I get started? What's my best pathway forward? And if you can answer those for them, I think you're going to have some great sales and contacts.
Because there is no one way to automate.
No, there isn't.
There's a million different levels of automation.
Yep.
There's a million different kind of
Mhm.
complexities. And so yeah, we're really excited to help everyone find the solutions that they're looking for. Let's even talk smaller. What
Mhm.
about the startups? Like, where you spend a lot of time in the startup space.
Yep.
What's kind of exciting about that right now?
I mean, the everything that's AI starting to unlock.
Yeah.
I think the new word that everyone's locking in on is physical AI, sometimes known as embedded AI, but we call it physical here in the States. But that is allowing these startups to do things you just couldn't think about
Right.
5 years ago.
Right.
There, it is just opening up so many doors to them. So it's really cool. If you have these startups that are bringing solutions to market that 5 years ago were probably impossible to bring, but now those startups, because of AI and just other technology breakthroughs, they're going to be able to introduce those to us here at Automate, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what is that hot startup this year.
It's almost like automation itself is empowering smaller companies to
Yes,
do more.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is not only can you automate your operations, startups are automating themselves using this very same technology.
And the startup competition is going to be later today here at the show. And then later this week, we'll have the winner of the startup competition back on the desk to do an interview. So stay tuned. Make sure to check us out. Of course, we're on LinkedIn and at YouTube. And thank you for following us. Okay, back to market intelligence, which is really where you're going to focus. What does that actually mean for the A3 membership? We have, of course, 1,200 members
Yep.
of the association. And so, kind of, what are they going to be looking forward to?
I mean, I think in this new role, one of the things I'm going to be doing is actually here at Automate is reaching out to a lot of our members, asking those very questions of like, what are you looking for? What are those intelligence points that through all our other members we can actually gather for you and get those out there? I think uh, we've already produced so many great reports, and like one of the interesting ones that I think we're going to be continuing to build on is how non-automotive is really one of the fastest growing areas for robotics and automation. And so I think you're gonna see from our department some nice deep dives into those non-automotives. What are those new sectors
Yeah.
that are becoming opened up because of automation and all that, and where are those new opportunities for our members to go pursue these? Are there new industries that are just getting started in automation that need a lot of help? They're asking those same questions we just talked about.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can we help connect those folks to our members? I think
Yes.
is going to be our biggest goal.
And of course, as a member of A3, that gives you access to a lot of
Yes.
really in-depth reports. If you didn't know that, like I said, the team has already been working for years. There's so many reports available, and you cannot access them unless you're a member.
Yes.
So get in touch with Amy Zemickley and get your A3 membership started. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. Let's bounce back to the show here. You
Yep.
mentioned physical AI. We mentioned that there's going to be the humanoid robot forum here tomorrow and the next day. What are you kind of looking forward to them talking about in regards to physical AI? Are you going to be surprised by anything that anyone has to say?
I think that there's still an opportunity for some surprises.
Sure.
But I do think that for like, especially when we're starting to look at the humanoids, it is sort of getting to the point of it's time to see what the robots can do.
Yeah.
The days of the demo are coming to an end. That's not to say we're not gonna have some great demos here, but I think a lot of folks are asking the questions of like, I see the demo, I see what you're doing. How is this going to help my operation?
Exactly.
How can I deploy this humanoid or this mobile manipulator or this new robot into my operation? And that's the question I think everyone's in, because it's just getting to that point of
Yeah.
we need automation.
Right.
Okay. We
Right.
don't need science projects anymore. We need folks actually showing us what we're doing. And I think we're going to see that finally
We're
at
all
the show.
impressed by the really cool videos that
Yes.
we see, but how am I actually going to
Yeah.
use this?
I mean, I can watch robots dance all day
Yeah.
long and do flying kicks. At the end of the day, I needed to pick up a hammer and do something.
And there's something unique about physical AI that's actually enabling that. Like
Yes.
that was not accessible before, but because the AI can be on board
Yes.
as a part of the robot,
Yep.
you can do more of these unique.
Yeah, and the whole thing is now that we have the robots where they're literally learning how to do new tasks, I think that's just going to open up even more and more opportunities. But it is going to be showing how some of these robots can move from task to task to task.
Yeah.
It needs to just be, I think there just needs to be more comfort in that, and those companies that deliver on that are going to get the sales.
Yeah.
They're going to get the
Absolutely.
sales.
Absolutely. And so even if you're not here tomorrow or the next day, we do have the humanoid robot pavilion in the South Hall. And
Mhm.
so there you can see all of our humanoid exhibitors. You can see some humanoids and
Yep.
just come and talk to them and see, what they have to offer for you and your business.
Yes.
Okay, Aaron, let's just wrap up and kind of talk about big picture trends. We talked about physical AI. Is there anything else kind of on your radar in this automation space right now?
I mean, I think it's just the continuation of what other industries are we starting to see opening
Right.
up.
Right.
Uh, Life sciences, I think, is a really interesting industry,
Yep.
and the idea of adding robotics and AI to that, where it can actually make science discoveries happen faster,
Yeah.
is just fascinating. Not just for a roboticist, but
Right.
as a human, just saying
Yeah.
we could actually see breakthroughs in medical science because now we have robots and AI that can work 24/7 on these solutions. That's amazing.
Which is such a problem in that area of like
Yeah.
not having the personnel and
Mhm.
not having enough providers and not having the bandwidth
Yeah.
to address all of
Yeah.
these things.
And then I think the other thing is I'm just curious of what did I see a year or two ago at maybe a robot research conference? Now I see on the floor
Right.
of how fast are those technologies maturing from research projects in the other area. It's funny is just a couple weeks ago we had the largest research uh, conference in Europe happened, and it was humanoids and hands everywhere. And now it's like, okay, how long until we see that level of humanoids and hands here at Automate?
Here.
And I think we're already starting to see some hands
Yep.
coming out. So it is just fascinating of just connecting all that research we saw just 2 weeks ago is actually starting to show up on the floor here for sale.
And it's
That's
because of that extremely accelerated timeline, it's
yes.
so hard to think into the future and try to predict. I
Hmm.
mean, like you said, you've been in robotics, you've been in automation for many years. Backing up, I don't know, maybe a couple years, did you see things getting to where they are now? And then how do you kind of look forward to the next year or two?
I mean, as a kid that grew up on Star Wars, you always dreamed of the Star Wars world where we would just be walking down the street and nonchalantly another robot passes us.
Yep.
I think those that was always the dream,
Yeah.
but it is getting to the point of I think we're getting there. I mean, it's really
Okay.
fascinating as we're starting to actually see some of this really happen. And yeah, I've been in this industry for so long. It's just coming an amazing thing that we're getting to what I pictured 20 years ago. It's starting to happen, and it's just if I can be excited about that, I'm hoping everyone else is being excited about it as well.
It's so exciting. I mean, even for me, I don't come from the automation space and I started 3 years ago and I feel like just in popular culture, it's amazing how
Yep.
prevalent automation robotics is. It makes me so excited to be here at A3 at the center of it all, at Automate Show at the center of it all.
Yes.
So, Aaron Prather, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
me. We're so excited to have you on the team and make sure you stay tuned all week right here on Automate Live for more great interviews. Thanks. Yay! Thanks, Aaron.
If you look at the future doesn't wait. The future doesn't wait. It's built, both one block at a time and in sweeping, bold strokes. It wasn't that long ago that automation felt like the future. Something you'd test, something you'd pilot, something you'd approach with fear or caution. But what was once experimental is now operational. What was once simply emerging is now essential. Today, automation is proven. It's real and it's everywhere. These technologies are now powering the world's most advanced operations. Smart robotics, intelligent vision, cutting-edge systems. These are AI-driven decisions at speed, precision, and scale. This is your moment to fully commit, to act decisively, to embrace the opportunities, to take your vision and turn it into your reality. The time to build is now. Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Automate. The future doesn't wait. It's built, both one block at a time and in sweeping, bold strokes. It wasn't that long ago that automation felt like the future. Something you'd test, something you'd pilot, something you'd approach with fear or caution. But what was once experimental is now operational. What was once simply emerging is now essential. Today, automation is proven. It's real and it's everywhere. These technologies are now powering the world's most advanced operations. Smart robotics, intelligent vision, cutting-edge systems. These are AI-driven decisions at speed, precision, and scale. This is your moment to fully commit, to act decisively, to embrace the opportunities, to take your vision and turn it into your reality. The time to build is now. Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Automate.
One of the lessons is if you want to move boxes at super high rates, super predictably, even for the company that, kind of pioneered legged robotics, sometimes wheels are better.
So our robot comes gripper included. But what I would say is that we offer a dramatically different developer experience.
I thought that there was a real chance to bring the sidewalk kind of version of this, which is a smaller form factor, less kinetic energy by like 3 orders of magnitude.
We are actually changing the nature of work on construction sites.
For him, it was almost like he reawakened this ability that he didn't have anymore, that he thought he didn't have anymore from 35 years prior.
People just create a much stronger connection when she's, got arms and legs and a head and eye contact.
One of the lessons is if you want to move boxes at super high rates, super predictably, even for the company that, kind of pioneered legged robotics, sometimes wheels are better.
So our robot comes gripper included. But what I would say is that we offer a dramatically different developer experience.
AI play, which is the combination of actual physical infrastructure for data centers and the
which is a smaller form factor, less kinetic energy by like 3 orders of magnitude.
We are actually changing the nature of work on construction sites.
For him, it was almost like he reawakened this ability that he didn't have anymore, that he thought he didn't have anymore from 35 years prior.
People just create a much stronger connection when she's, got arms and legs and a head and eye contact.
The future doesn't wait. It's built, both one block at a time and in sweeping, bold strokes. It wasn't that long ago that automation felt like the future. Something you'd test, something you'd pilot, something you'd approach with fear or caution. But what was once experimental is now operational. What was once simply emerging is now essential. Today, automation is proven. It's real and it's everywhere. These technologies are now powering the world's most advanced operations. Smart robotics, intelligent vision, cutting-edge systems. These are AI-driven decisions at speed, precision, and scale. This is your moment to fully commit, to act decisively, to embrace the opportunities, to take your vision and turn it into your reality. The time to build is now. Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Automate.
This is what I have been thinking about for many years now. If your car is driving at 60 miles an hour, does the car have the luxury to wait for the clouds to tell it what to do? I would say no.
The big one is clearly at TRI, the diffusion policy. That was a big outcome for us to be able to show off this ability to do imitation learning, where there is no writing of code and you can teach the robots to do these really complex behaviors.
Can I foresee for robotics, the data does not really exist, and human captured data is necessary, but it's barely going to be sufficient. It's not even going to be 1% of the total data.
Like the data.
Why simulation has not been used because the technology.
We're sort of defined in our intelligence by our ability to use tools, and if we look at all the ways we interact with the world around us, I don't move a pallet by lifting it, I move a pallet by using a pallet jack. Why on earth would I make a humanoid robot that's going to pull a pallet jack around? What a suboptimal use of all of that complexity and all that capability. And so I think we're going to have to kind of imagine for our industry and for our economy this portfolio of robotics that's going to do everything that we want them to do and not be attached to the idea of a particular form factor being the right one for everything.
This is something that humans have been dreaming about for thousands of years. Like the early conceptions of the humanoid robot were like 3rd century, BC in China. I think the Greeks were even writing about things like humanoid robots. So we've been conceiving of this as humans for thousands of years before we conceived of computers.
But for robotics, the data does not really exist. And human captured data is necessary, but it's barely going to be sufficient. It's not even going to be 1% of the total data.
Like the data is out there, right? The world is out there. We just don't have a database to train on.
That's right. The world is it's out there, and a lot of it is not purposeful enough in order to do these, especially the problems that we're trying to solve for labor shortages or dangerous jobs where, humanity, for us, it's so easy to do dexterous manipulation. But in the case of AI robotics, that technology doesn't even exist. In fact, it's in research today. So we are, creating workflows for synthetic data generation, augmenting real-world capture. So data generation first, training second, testing and simulation third, and deployment fourth. And if you look at where much of the effort in the industry right now is, especially as it relates to solving the future problems of dexterous manipulation, and it turns out a lot of dexterous manipulation can be solved with bimanual versus just a single arm. If it's a fairly big rigid body and you're doing pick and place, the existing cobot arms and existing industrial arms with suction grippers or 2 fingers, it works reasonably well as AI is advancing. But many of the problems that we're trying to solve are are sort of deformables in a way, right? Even if it's not extremely fluid or, but still deformables, wires and so on. So data generation is much of the effort in the industry right now is being spent on technologies for making data generation more efficient so that you can then train the model. And then once you train the model, testing it in simulation is where we are seeing rapid explosion of ecosystem partners that are jumping on it.
Obviously I was there because it was an A3 event, but I was watching the talk that you gave at Automate, and I think that the term that you were using was synthetic data that really jumped out at me because it's basically this, almost this infinite loop of training and simulation where it's constantly just training itself on data. And I'm wondering if that's a way to, I know this word is used a lot in the context of LLMs, but to start introducing hallucinations and to start, classically, if you're making Xeroxes, the more copies you make of something, the further away it gets from the original. So the more you train something in synthetic data, the more opportunity you have to introduce false data into the process.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's two main ways we can address it. Number one, of course, there's always back it up with human data collection, right? So that much of the synthetic data that you're generating could be based on real-world data, but then you're changing the trajectories, changing the background, changing the environment, changing scenarios. The odds of hallucinating from that would be fairly low. And second, even if it's purely synthetic data generation, you should have reinforcement learning, right? So you can always have, the same thing was true with even, back in the day with LLMs a couple of years ago. The first check for all that was done with humans, but what's called reinforcement learning, based on human feedback. But increasingly, of course, you can use human feedback, but we can also build AIs that are very purpose-built to make sure that the model, the data is not hallucinating and it's exactly in the domain and conditions that you want it to operate in. So you can use other AIs to basically curate it and fine-tune it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that it sounds like you've discovered is that training robots it's going to be a combination of everything, right? It's going to be video training, it's going to be simulation, it's even going to be. I was talking to the founders of Skilled recently, and they're talking about pre-training, post-training, that even like teleop has a role to play in that process.
That's right. So there's multiple things that need to be done, right? So first is real-world data collection. Real-world data collection can be done through teleoperation is a good scenario. There's also imitation learning where you can just do show the robot how you're doing without teleoperation. So those are the two most popular. And then of course, third is showing videos, right? It's same as, essentially it's imitation learning. So those are the three biggest ways, the whole industry is gravitated towards. And we think that all of those are good to have and necessary. The question then is, are they sufficient? And the answer is they're not sufficient. Do as much as you can. If we can collect more real-world data, we should. But the belief is that that's not sufficient.
Look around. The signals are loud and clear. Automation is growing at scale, and so is Automate. Every year, we see more new technologies and more industries, and the momentum keeps building. The ripple effect is impossible to ignore. Next year, we're going all in Las Vegas, a city built for big ideas and a hub for innovation. There's never been a better time to make your move than at Automate 2027. See you in Las Vegas.
Kindness is a parachute for failure. In my career, it's a force multiplier for success. Like I said, and when people are kind to each other, especially in times of failure, you can fall back on each other. And it softens that blow. Of course, approached by all have failed tech companies during that time. We should learn from it. Like, hey, I'm happy with that. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It hurts what we're doing. When Amazon came, it was a little bit different. To tell you why, kindness. My journey is kind of from rockets to robots. It makes a huge difference. The successes are even higher. The towns are. It does seem that way. Now we had the initial conversation.
Yeah, and the lesson that I learned early on,
it wasn't just in the digital world. It was about true application.
Yeah, I can see that.
Something I learned one step at a time.
I can see that.
I learned how to and making something
that time.
Also, I had an advantage
now how small the
and
industry is, how in some ways and aerospace it is
the scale of
and really are working with the same people. Literally do when you end up connecting with the people that you went to school with. Precision how do you
I tried to get the website as one to do everything. Once I finished that and not
reliability, high quality. So I knew I had an advantage there back in the 90s.
And giving back, I know, once
down angles part of that. They had purpose as well. Sent to Brazil, we had Rusty Drake. These are all they're friends. These are friends. We're listening to this podcast. No matter what you see, this field, incredible technology, things, incredible AI that we're developing. You need purpose. That there's so much growth that can happen in that we don't compete like strategy and operations. We got a little allergic to that.
Hello, and welcome back to Automate Live. My name is Jana Martin. I'm the Media Production Manager for the Association of Advancing Automation, and I am joined today by the CEO of Transfigure AI, Bobby. Bobby, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm running purely on adrenaline right now. We just set up the booth, and everything's going to go great. So I'm really looking forward to the show.
And your booth is here in the North Hall. If you're at the show, make sure to come over to the North Hall, booth 11057.
That's right.
Yep. So stop by and see what Bobby's doing. I mean, let's just dive right into show and tell here. We can't ignore what's on the desk.
Okay.
I guess maybe let's back up for a quick second. What is Transfigure and what does it do?
So Transfigure is AI that makes physical stuff. What we do is turn images into 3D CAD models. And we're not just talking like, another agent for Fusion or an agent in SolidWorks. We're actually creating these parts as a step file natively to create parts that could be anything like this. So I won't attempt to put this on because I might hit the mic, but you could draw a sketch, get a part, draw a sketch, get another part. And we make more than just these tchotchkes, which are really just routed parts. But the goal of Transfigure is by taking what is really like the most pure input to a design, which is a drawing. Thanks. Everybody can draw, and even my 8-year-old can draw a part and say, Dad, I want this to be created, and I want to make this. We allow people to do that now using AI. They don't need to have a SolidWorks, Fusion, CATIA, NX subscription.
Right.
It just actually makes it for you.
So many walls have been broken down.
That's right. And we don't use LLMs to do this work. A lot of people are relying heavily on LLMs to write code to create CAD models. We actually create step directly.
What is kind of the fault in that of using LLMs? Why do you not?
That is a super good question, because a lot of the model creators like Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, LLMs are great at writing the things that they know, but fundamentally, in the different world of physical stuff, a lot of people rely on step files. As a lot of the audience would know, step files are like a CAD format, there is not a way to write that directly. It's not like writing code. It's not like writing an essay. It's actually writing a graph. And these graphs are what create the 3D world around us. You know, the desk that we're sitting at, the chairs that we're in, even the clothes that we wear, if they're produced on a piece of production equipment anywhere in the world, in mass production, there's a step file, or at the very least, like a 2D drawing behind these things.
Right.
Everything in this entire room. Right?
Bonus question: what did your kids want to make with this?
Well, a lot of Minecraft stuff. I mean, you know, we've actually received some parts like that in the pipeline from, you know, outside users that want to make stuff, and
Yeah.
you know, we're not prepared to make the best Minecraft looking figurines or pieces, but it is doable to some extent.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's so fun. I love it. So how did it come to be? Because you look at your LinkedIn and your resume, you were at Zoox, you were at Tesla, you've been doing some cool things for a long time. What made you kind of step away from that world?
Yeah, well, I've always been an entrepreneur from the very beginning. You know, even as a kid, you know, taking something and just like throwing it on the floor just to break it, just to see what's inside. That's how I would open stuff. But now I know to use tools. But you know, in college, I started my alma mater's Baja SAE team. You know, Baja SAE is like a design competition for students. Design a car, go race it. That's kind of what kicked off my automotive career. Working at Honda, then later at Tesla, Zoox, Archer, Range, and you know, the trend there is always progressively smaller companies working on maybe more weird, crazy things every single time. But with AI and the ability to code and try a lot of different things, it was the right time to move on from working purely in front of CATIA
Yeah.
and now figuring out how to replace, you know, like my job using
Interesting.
AI and you know, making physical stuff, you know,
Right.
making physical things using AI now.
I like that you took that approach. Like, I'm just gonna replace myself. I'm gonna be the one that does it.
Yeah, because you know, honestly, truly, no one else was,
Yeah.
and still no one else is that capable of doing it. The difference between what we're doing at Transfigure,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of the audience in here can appreciate, is you know, we're not stopping at software because the whole point of doing CAD is to have hardware.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of our
Physical
software
manifestation.
competition, a lot of our software competition is focusing on like, oh well, let's just throw an LLM at it. Okay, hey, it made a thing. Well, now what? Like, what do you do with the thing? Well, you know, we want people to make real stuff, even
Real
if this is
things.
very simple stuff. We want people to make real stuff, and so that's what we're doing in our booth. It's
Yeah.
proving end to end.
So you can actually, if you're at the show, you can go over to your booth and you made this here
Yeah,
today.
yeah, we made these parts here. So draw whatever you want. We have like a little mini press break. We could do some bent parts. It
Oh
won't be
my
that great
gosh.
because you know we don't have a fabrication team
Sure.
over there, but
Sure.
we're come over to the booth and draw something up.
So fun. Okay, so what's kind of broken today in the development process that you're fixing here?
Yeah, so you know it takes the reason why this is such a compelling area to work in is because machine shops oftentimes will get drawings from customers that don't have a 3D CAD file. What we found was about 20% of inbound to high demand or like on demand, like manufacturing shops, often is actually a 2D drawing. Sometimes it's a photo, scan. We even saw faxes come through. And so when a machine shop receives those as RFQs, oftentimes they just drop. It's like not worth their programmers' time to sit in front of SolidWorks, which is not what they would normally work in. You know, they're working in Mastercam or EasyCam or something. Sit in front of a CAD program, now have to hammer out a CAD model just to do a quote and make the part. So what we offer to do is like taking a 2D drawing, and 2D engineering drawings are full of rich information about what the part should look like. We take that, make a 3D model, and immediately it can be quoted, immediately it can be put into production. So we
Wow.
allow machine shops, of just one example, an opportunity to actually capture inbound, increase revenue, make more stuff in America, reindustrialize America, is more possible because of
That's so
this.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was kind of the most painful part of the process that the AI you're describing it, but
Yeah.
can you just describe that pain point a little more?
Yes. So, and this is why you know, Transfigure is a very special company. We are not using again LLMs to just like say, hey, Claude, just go figure this thing out. We tried. Claude cannot figure it out. ChatGPT cannot figure it out. Gemini cannot figure it out. It's because this problem has not been solved yet. This is not like just rewriting some equations. Like we're actually now taking a workflow that has never existed before, and half of it is AI, and the other half is like we had to throw a lot of engineering at it. So the ability for someone to simply copy what we're doing, you know, even in Jeff Bezos with his Prometheus thing, like he raised, you know, several tens of billions of dollars for a good reason. Like this problem is yet to be solved. How will we actually get, engineered parts out of AI? That problem has not been solved yet. So we have a pipeline that works. So I'd say like we're ahead of Bezos in this effort, and really anyone else. Like we have a video on our screen in our booth that shows like compared to Gemini, of many examples, but compared to Gemini, Transfigure solves this and orders the part for you, or well, you order the part yourself, and you can order a part in the span of like 3 minutes. And Gemini hasn't even attempted to start on the model after like 6.5 minutes, and then we had to just cut it off because it's too much arguing with Gemini.
Yeah,
You know,
I
to
know.
continue
Go
working.
back, do it again. You did it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
We've all been there with the
So
chat.
it's an unsolved problem,
Yeah.
and it's still quite unsolved.
Yeah.
So I'd say the whole thing is actually quite difficult.
So tell me about your customers. Like, what
Yeah.
are they telling you about this product? How are they liking it? Are they giving you ideas for improvements?
Absolutely. We have not signed any agreements with any company yet, but we've had interest from people like Boeing, even from NASCAR. Meter is a SF-based company doing networking equipment. Amphenol, like many companies have come and said, and many job shops as well. That's some OEM. So job shops have said, if you could just take this 2D thing, make it into anything that's 3D, that's not STL, not a point cloud, but we want step.
Yeah.
Step is a requirement, as you know, for manufactured parts. If you can make a step file out of this, like, then there's something there. And yeah, we could do pretty basic stuff. But as we develop our capabilities and train our own foundation model, which is the goal, we're laying the architecture for that through the end of this year. And we will raise Series A in 2027 to train a foundation model to do this for real.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. So is
yeah.
this your first time going through this full like startup process series and
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
Okay.
As I think there's a lot of other startups at Automate.
There are.
And I think everyone has their own journey, but I've seen enough of from Honda, like very efficient, great, respected company, learned a lot there, to Tesla, and it's totally crazy. Then Zoox, Archer, Range, and all these smaller companies. That's been a great opportunity for me to just learn, see the big picture and go to the extremely small picture startup phase as well. So I found it to be the right time for
A
me.
new series of challenges, no doubt. Now you're the boss. You have to figure it out.
That is correct. Yeah. But
Okay,
it's
what
fun.
do people get wrong about AI in manufacturing?
Yeah. I think people think that AI might be a silver bullet
Yeah.
to just taking care of a lot of things, but and in some ways it is, but the application often still requires the creativity of a human.
Right.
The human element can't be replaced. That's where humans have real experience of pain, understanding real problems in the world, and even talking to other humans, right? Like at the end of the day, we're all just trying to work with other humans in this world. And so AI just helps us get there, but AI is no replacement for the human intuition and pain and suffering of manufacturing, design.
Right.
And those are the real areas that I think AI is not fully capable of solving yet. But that's why we're all here, is to use
Use it
AI
as a
to
tool.
help
Yeah,
to help us out.
exactly. Okay, so walk me through the process. If I were to come to your booth, what would happen? Like, I have a napkin, I sketch something out. Is that how simple? And then what happens?
Yeah, so we have a pad of paper there with a bunch of Sharpies. Come draw something. We're going to advise people not to draw like something too complicated. We have a CNC router that we're using from Tormach. Tormach is one of our partners. They're somewhere over there at a different booth. And Tormach's XS Tech Pro has allowed us to bring it to the show. Very portable solution of just making parts on the fly. We also have a 3D printer that we're going to use in tandem, but draw a picture, send it to our AI pipeline. It'll go into then Autodesk Fusion, and again, like we don't intend to be the owner of everything.
Right.
Fusion is a great program to write G code, post the G code directly to the XS Tech, and it cuts it right there. And then, come back an hour later, because we're going to be busy, but come back an hour later, and you too could be the proud owner of a gold chain with your name on it. So
that is so cool. I love it. So simple.
Yeah.
So accessible. Okay, so what's something that would have taken just like a small amount of time, or a large amount of time before a Transfigure, and then now you come in, you walked us through this process already, but
yeah, a good example would be, we heard from some metalworking studios, and these are like fabrication shops that specialize more on the art side of things. They'll have an artist come to them with a very elaborate drawing of like ironwork sort of stuff for like a fence or a grate. like an artistic piece of thing, say, hey, you know, XYZ shop, like I need you to cut this out of like like a slab of iron on your water jet. Here you go. And they're like, well, do you have a CAD model for this? And I'm like, no, I don't have a CAD model. Like I'm an artist. So then they have to take this very elaborate drawing and convert that into, you know, DXF. But even that takes a long time. With our pipeline, one of the applications that we were requested to investigate is, can you just take this image of an artist sketch and turn that into, you know, with step files, but we natively work on, make a step file, and then we make a DXF off of that. Said, yeah, of course. And then, you know, it's kind of actually very similar to what we're doing with these cheesy, you know, initials and logos.
Right.
But otherwise, that work would take, you know, many hours, if not like weeks, to perform to get it just right. And the best part about a step file is, you know, although it's not truly parametric, like native to say Fusion or CATIA, you are able to modify it in a CAD program, and that gives you at least a very good starting point.
Yeah.
Later on, we will have a way for users to edit the step file. You know, just like you would red pen a drawing, draw a circle, say like, oh, this radius should be 3, not 6.
Right.
And AI will go in there and
then
fix it for you. Yeah.
Very cool. You've done some fundraising, you've talked to some VCs.
Yes.
What is kind of the feedback you get from them?
Everyone knows that this is a problem that is going to be solved. I think people are still trying to figure out who to bet on. You know, if this were a horse race, like who do I bet on, one or another?
Right.
And we think by being here at Automate, this is a great way to demonstrate traction. You know, VCs care only about traction. Like, who's your customer? Do you know your customer? I think a lot of these people in this building are our customers, and we're using this as a launch pad for our Series Seed fundraising, which is commencing in July. So it's perfect timing.
I love it. Well, that's was going to be my last question. Is this your first time at Automate?
This is.
Okay, and so why you came here so that you could be connected? You're gonna launch.
Yeah, we're testing. You know, the Automate show, and is the perfect testing ground for like, what do real humans think. Meeting a lot of people and just understanding the customer better is really one of the goals, as well as just pushing it out in the world and testing all the time. Testing never stops.
Yeah, well, we're so excited to be sharing about Transfigure with all of you here on Automate Live. A reminder, you can come and see Bobby and get your very own, your cool chain logo made.
I'll attempt to put it on. I won't attempt it.
And you're going to want to do that at booth 11057 here in the North Hall. That's going to be it for this episode of Automate Live. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes.
This is what I have been thinking about for many years now. If your car is driving at 60 miles an hour, does the car have the luxury to wait for the clouds to tell it what to do? I would say no.
The big one is clearly at TRI, the diffusion policy. That was a big outcome for us to be able to show off this ability to do imitation learning, where there is no writing of code and you can teach the robots to do these really complex behaviors.
Can I foresee cars being made? One, they should be mostly software defined in the next few years, and can they be made in a 100% automated line without any human touch? Yeah, I can see that. I can see that in 10 years. I can't see a humanoid working alongside me in the kitchen in the next 10 years.
We're sort of defined in our intelligence by our ability to use tools, and if we look at all the ways we interact with the world around us, you know, I don't move a pallet by lifting it, I move a pallet by using a pallet jack. Why on earth would I make a humanoid robot that's going to pull a pallet jack around? What a suboptimal use of all of that complexity and all that capability. And so I think we're going to have to kind of imagine for our industry and for our economy this portfolio of robotics that's going to do everything that we want them to do, and not be attached to the idea of a particular form factor being the right one for everything.
This is something that humans have been dreaming about for thousands of years. Like, the early conceptions of a humanoid robot were like 3rd century, you know, BC in China. I think the Greeks were even writing about things like humanoid robots. So we've been conceiving of this as humans for thousands of years, before we conceived of computers.
As we looked at humanoids, and as I continue to look at robotics, there were a few things that stood out as really critical in commercial environments. One is you want to be safety rated and safety rated, because most of these process paths that aren't going to be automated in some other way benefit from being able to work in and around humans. And if you're trying to work in and around humans, you don't want any risk of falling on a human, injuring a human. And when you have a balancing system, that's very tough to guarantee, right? Because any glitch between sensing and electrical and actuation can cause an instability that causes that robot to fall, right? And so that was the first thing was, and then you ask yourself, do you really need bipedalism? And then, you know, in commercial environments, people are moving things around with the assist of wheels, of carts, right? Or powered, you know, equipment. And so you're not carrying things up and down stairs that, you know, that might exist in apartment buildings in New York City trying to move in and out, but that doesn't exist in a commercial warehouse, right? Nobody's really carrying things up and down stairs. There's not a real need for bipedalism. Yes, there are ramps and lips and things like that, but you can get over those with wheels, with maybe some degree of suspension, active or passive suspension. So you don't need bipedalism. You don't need quadrupeds either, right? Like good wheels, the right size wheels, the right size suspension will help you in whatever you need to do. You really want swappable batteries? Nobody in humanoids is really solving. Like if you have to sit on a charger, you lose, you know, look, we as humans, we sleep 7-8 hours a day. We lose a third of our productivity every day to sleep, right? Why would you do that in an industrial environment if you could avoid it?
You either lose productivity or you have to buy like 3 times as many robots.
Or you have to buy 3 times as many robots. That's right. And you need a whole bunch of space for the robots to park as they charge. Like, I'm even more bullish that like sitting on a charger is, or maybe more opinionated that sitting on a charger is a completely horrible use of a robot. Your whole goal of a robot is to be operating in production continuously, right? And taking on meaningful work. And so sitting on a charger doesn't make any sense. You really want your sensors not to move around and not to move up and down. So the problem is if you're a balancing system, your sensing is always moving around. And so you have to then compensate with your AI algorithms for the fact that your sensors are never stable. And so your calibration's a lot harder. Anyhow, there's just a whole bunch of and the cost, the amount of, and then I think the biggest problem is they're not strong enough, right? You can't get the torque density in one of these like shoulder motors to be able to lift what humans can lift. And look, we use linear actuation in our muscles, and look, we're very, very finely tuned for it. You know, our robot Proxy, which is is more of the form factor that obviously I espouse, 4 wheels on the ground. The latest generation can lift 200 pounds. Right now, it does that because it has a screw drive in the spine, right?
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Automate Live. Really, welcome to Automate. We are just getting this party started here on Monday, and what a great way to kick off these interviews as we're just getting in the groove. So I'm excited to introduce our 2 guests. We've got Winston Leung from QNX, Senior Strategic Alliances Manager. We're going to get to what that alliance looks like in a second, because we also have Chen Su, Head of Edge AI Product Marketing at NVIDIA. So, Winston, I'm going to send this question to you first. You know, what does QNX do? And then let's talk about what the QNX-NVIDIA relationship looks like. So, Winston, if you want to lead us off, and then Chen, if you want to pick it up from there.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. So QNX provides the real-time foundational software for embedded systems. We've had a long-standing partnership with NVIDIA in the automotive space, working on the ADAS, the autonomous drive systems, on the AGX Drive OS platforms. And now we're evolving that partnership into the industrial space, leveraging a lot of the same capabilities, the same foundations, the same operating system layers that are needed to build a safe, secure, and high-performance system.
Yeah. Chen, what would you add?
Yeah, so QNX and NVIDIA have worked in the AV space for many years. And I think it's very natural for us to collaborate together on robotics and industrial AI space, where today, I think in this industry, we have seen a lot of changes. Number one is the manufacturing space needs more intelligence.
Yeah.
And those intelligence are not just doing small things like seeing in, doing like defect detection. We are seeing more general intelligence and also general robotics applications here. And those applications gonna move from, initially have the basic foundation model powered by generative AI, but moving towards having more specialty, like doing like task-specific AI. For example, you have seen a lot of humanoid this year in the show floor powered by NVIDIA technology, and we're super excited about that. But those robots need to be safe, working alongside with humans. That's where our collaboration with QNX is about. So we are announcing today at NVIDIA is doing Halos for robotics, basically extending our AV stack, the safety system, all the way to robotics. And on that, it's very important that we have a hardware, software, and inspection process that help the entire ecosystem moving forward. And our collaboration with QNX around our software part, where how to make sure we have a real-time low latency and safety OS to power the entire general intelligence for industrial space.
All right. Well, Chen, you started going down a path I wanted to go down. What's changing on the factory floor right now? We're going to talk in generalities, and then we're going to get specifically into safety, which I think makes a lot of sense based on your automotive relationship. Winston, this question would be for you. Chen, you were talking about how manufacturing needs more intelligence. You referenced task-specific AI. Those are some changes we're seeing on the factory floor. Winston, is there anything you would add? Other changes we're seeing out there right now?
Yeah, the biggest thing in the manufacturing warehouse space is that a lot of the robots were deployed in isolated, separate environments from human beings. That was a way of making sure that the robots are operating safely alongside humans in the sense that they're completely separated. Now we're starting to see an evolution where we're seeing robots integrate more with human beings. You're seeing a suite of different applications, including robotic surgery. You're seeing delivery robots. You're seeing even in restaurants now. And even in the warehouse space where you're loading from the assembly line to the trucks. There's a lot of integration paths where you're leveraging a lot of the sensor applications, and you're needing that intelligence and being able to process it quickly, but also in a safe manner. And that's where this collaboration makes a lot of sense, because you're leveraging a lot of the AI compute functionalities of NVIDIA, but you're also building it on a safe foundation based on QNX.
Yeah, let's take an even deeper dive into that, because I think it's very fitting that your relationship started in automotive, which is probably the epitomous industry that we think of when we think of robots in cages, right? Robots are doing a very specific task. They're not out there moving around like, a humanoid would be today, or a collaborative robot would today. So, let's dive in a little further into robotic safety and safety OS. You brought that up, Chen. I'd really love to understand what the future looks like from a safety standpoint. Maybe paint a picture in an industrial setting, because you were referencing, Winston, hey, we're seeing them in restaurants and things like that. But let's paint the picture of what this looks like even deeper in an industrial sense.
For sure. I think before I answer that question, we need to use some analogy coming from automotive space, where today, if you look at where AI have successfully deployed in the physical AI space, AV probably is the first place where we see that success. Today, powered by end-to-end generative AI models, those vehicle can go from the East Coast all the way to West Coast without human touch, right? But AV is kind of an easy thing to solve if you think about it. Is only have 4 wheels, you only working on the road, right? So, but in the industrial space, the robots are not just working in that easy environment. You are working alongside in an unstructured environment with human beings. That creates a lot of challenge. Meanwhile, robots are created to solve problem in the process, and there are different tasks in the process. There are like assembly process, welding, and you name it, right? Even like put, a screw into a PCB board. A variety of application. How do you make sure that intelligence can be transferred into those tasks? So you need to have a really rigorous process. So that's why NVIDIA are working with our ecosystem to do what we call the same first kind of principle, meaning like you do all of those in the simulation first, because in the simulation it is safe, much more easy to set up the environment, but also very cheap to do it, compared to you do it in the real world. And once you have that model, trained in simulation, and you can also supplement the data that you couldn't be able to collect in the real world. For example, some defect that you wouldn't be able to encounter, or some scenario you wouldn't be able to collect. And that way you can enhance the AI model to be higher accurate, and then eventually you deploy in real world. So to solve this whole process, you need a much more rigorous, simulation first kind of principle to do it in the industrial space. That's where we see a lot of innovation happening. And an example of that is if you look into all the humanoid robots today, that's where they start with, like simulation first, and then they test validate all of those tasks, and then eventually deploy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's important here is that the collaboration with QNX and NVIDIA allows you to deploy these systems into actual real-world environments. So you get the simulation, you get the ecosystem, you get this whole simulation, deployment, retraining environment available with NVIDIA, and for you to go and customers to go commercial with it on a real-time OS that's meant for real-world applications.
Yeah, I appreciate the deep dive. I also like the comparison to, cars and self-driving at the beginning. I hope there aren't any self-driving engineers listening to this whose job you called easy during the start of that answer. But I do. Let's go a little further. Where would you say the industry is right now? Because I see where it's going with humanoids, the data that you have to train them on. Where would you see most manufacturers are right now? Or where are you seeing them getting stuck, perhaps? Winston, do you want to lead this one off?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things right now is we're just starting to see that evolution. They're just starting to break the cages, get out into these open environments. So the challenges that they're running inside the cages are very different than the challenges they're seeing outside the cages. And we did a survey of 1,000 engineers, and one of the biggest things that came out of it was that software architecture was the biggest hurdle. A lot of these systems were designed for isolated environments. Now they're moving into this unstructured real-world deployment. And now you have to be able to safety certify. You need to trace all the different logs. You have to make sure you have fault injections. You have to understand the implications of the safety cases that are being deployed into these environments and be able to trace it back to the hardware or the software code that's being developed. So what's really interesting here is that we're just starting to see that crux of evolution in this space, and the standards are moving at the same pace as well. So the standards aren't there yet. They're transitioning, but you're starting to see it in all sorts of manner in terms of what we define as collaborative applications. And the first standard that went forward was 10218 with the robotic industrial arms, right, where they introduced the term collaborative applications instead of cobots.
There you go. All right, so we're seeing standards for collaborative applications, and like you said, not just being called cobots anymore. Chen, what would you add?
Yeah, I kind of would definitely agree with you, because what I have heard from all the engineers that I work with, they say in the last 2 or 3 years, the innovation in robotics and industrial AI is something that they have not seen in the last 20 years. So the speed of innovation is definitely like fast, and in that process, in the first 2 or 3 years that we are seeing is people are starting to realize how to work on the AI model. But the real challenge is now you have those models that are sort of capable. How do you put that into real world deployment? Number one, you need super powerful AI computer on the robots. That's why NVIDIA introduced the NVIDIA Thor family with Jetson and IGX that help those robots to be smarter, and also sensor connectivity where the robots standard that we have on the sensor side was not built for intelligent robots today, like humanoid. So we kind of pioneered the Ethernet-based sensor connectivity to one, solve the low latency issue, but number two is to make it safety certifiable. And then like now you have this AI compute layer. How do you make the safety stack really work? I think that's something that people have not built in the past, right? That's why like QNX and NVIDIA working together on that safety layer. You are not just need the real-time OS, but also you have to help people do the safety, certification process and safety programming over there on the chip level. And lastly, you need to work with the certification body. And you talked about that point earlier. This is a whole new standard to put AI and safety all together. So that's why NVIDIA is working with, ANSI, ANAP, all of the certification body to make it easy. And we work across the stack with partners on the AI model side, on the human or OEM side, on the sensor side, and on the robot controller side, all type of partners that we work together to build the entire reference system so that eventually when people want to take the solution to do a safety certification path, it is easy. So we call that lab, NVIDIA's AI inspection lab, system inspection lab to help accelerate that process.
We have a few minutes left, and Winston, I want to give you a chance to answer that same question, but also I'll throw the next one out there if you want to address this as well. What industries are we seeing this in? Also, because we know automotive has been a sweet spot for robotics for ages, but Winston, as you answer, where are we seeing this out in the field? Maybe address also the type of industries that are doubling down on it, because you mentioned your partnership has extended from automotive to industrial in general. So it'd be great to learn what some of those are.
Yeah, for sure. Anywhere where you see, perceive, and actuate, that's where our partnership makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of applications where I mentioned in surgical robotics, where you have a surgical operator. Maybe there's aided AI applications to help detect anomalies within the body. If you're looking at the warehouse space, you're seeing a lot of the deployments outside the cages. When you're looking at isolating with the cages, safety LiDARs, safety light curtains, it gets very expensive from an integration standpoint. So what they're looking to do is reduce the BOM cost, add more sensors to these robots, navigate around human beings, work collaboratively. There's a lot of different standards being moved in this fashion. If you look at the AMR space or the IMR, industrial mobile robots, where you're starting to see a lot of these applications is both in the B and C category, where you have full stacks as well as maybe a robotic arm. The humanoid space is another form factor of another mobile robot. But we're seeing a lot of different applications from both land, sea, and air. So there's a wide variety of different applications where this is servicing, and the safety layer is what's really critical. And what we're providing is that foundational layer that allows customers to really deploy into these markets and simplify their certification process.
Yeah. As we wrap up our conversation, I think a great spot to finish would be, what does this industry look like in the next 5 years? Chen, maybe if you want to lead off, and Winston, if you want to wrap it up from there, let's go in that order.
For sure. So what I'm seeing today on the show floor, you probably also see the same thing, is the innovators are solving the problem one step ahead, right? So we have seen humanoid today doing material handling, right? Because that's where today they can do with the models that power them. But slowly they probably can do, the assembly process, they can do cabling, they can do sorting. And people are putting AI model to be a general specialist model that's solving each process reliably. And once you probably don't see a moment that everything gonna be solved simultaneously. It's actually solved step by step, because in the real world, who gonna use those technology? Manufacturer, right? The people who build things in the US here. And they're gonna adopt those technologies step by step. And we are seeing those collaboration from AI model partners, from like NVIDIA doing the hardware infrastructure, software, to QNX, to all of those ecosystems. I think that's the best thing where, from now into 5 years, this whole industry can be completely different from the year before.
Yeah, going from humanoids doing material handling to the general models that you referenced. I think that was a great summary. Winston, Chen, thank you so much for jumping on here at Automate Live. We will be back here with more interviews very soon.
This is what I have been thinking about.
We have an amazing marketing. We have an amazing marketing advisor. He used to be the chief marketing officer for T.
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to the cultural revolution.
This is
you alluded to the cultural revolution. So
now, if your car
given
is driving at 60 miles
it was
an hour,
ending
does
at the time, but
have the
even
luxury
despite
to wait
that
for the
fact, you
clouds
felt
to
like
tell it what to
this
do?
opportunity
I would say
still
no.
wasn't
The big one is clearly a TRI diffusion policy. That was a big
at that
outcome
time,
for us to be able to show off this ability to do
right? And then
imitation
China,
learning,
when I
where there
left,
is no writing of code, you can teach the robots
early
to do these really
90s,
complex
and I grew up in
Can I
the 80s.
foresee
It was
cars
not
being made?
the same
One, they should be
as
mostly
today.
software
So China
defined in
went
the next
leaps
few
and
years, and can
bounds,
they be
right?
made in 100%
So
automated line without any human touch, yeah, I can see that. I can see that in 10 years. I can't see a humanoid working alongside me in the kitchen
that
in
in
the
my
next 10 years.
lifetime
We're
to
sort of
witness.
defined in our intelligence by our ability to use tools.
A
And if we look
history
at all the
making,
ways we
right?
interact with the
Because you
world
have
around
to think
us,
about,
I don't move a pallet by
I grew
lifting
up
it,
in
I move a
central
pallet by using a
Beijing.
pallet
Like I
jack.
could jump
Why
on
on
a
earth would I make a
bicycle and
humanoid
roll
robot
to
that's gonna
Tiananmen
pull a pallet
Square
jack
like
around
half
with
an
a
hour. That's how
suboptimal use of all
central
of that
I
complexity
grew
and all
up
that
in. Like
capability?
central
And so I
Beijing,
think
and that's capital
we're going to
city
have
in
to kind of
China. But when I
imagine
was
for our
little,
industry
there
and
was
for
literally
our
horse
economy
buggies
this
in front of.
portfolio
I'm not
of
exaggerating,
robotics
right?
that's
So
going to
because
do
horse will
everything
come
that we
in
want
and
them
then
to
with
do
vegetables
and
and come
not be
in,
attached
and
to
we
the
will see
idea of a
that in
particular
our,
form factor
you know,
being the right one
on
for
our streets.
everything.
And
This
we
is
went
something
from
that
that
humans
to
have been
today. Like
dreaming
just
about
go
for
on
thousands of years.
TikTok and
The
see
early
what's trending
conceptions
today.
of the
So,
humanoid
but when I
robot
left,
were like
China
third
was still
century,
the way
BC
it was.
and China. I think the Greeks were even writing about things like humanoid robots. So we've been conceiving of this as humanoid, as humans,
and
for
there's
thousands of
fiercely
years before we
independent, and then
conceived
there's
of
a story
computers.
that you told me about your mom, which I think probably goes like a step beyond fiercely independent, and to such a degree that you're not in any position to make excuses for why you can't do something when your mom has taken those kind of risks to get to where she was.
No, because I think that's the I think that's the sort of spirit and DNA instilled in me, right? And then so if you see how hard she worked, and I talked about growing up, and I was so grateful actually for that pieces of childhood memory, because my sister was 4 years younger than me. She didn't remember any of it, because when she had the memory, our life already got better. But I remembered it because we lived in a we grew up in that's the end of Cultural Revolution, and we live in the 3-bedroom apartment shared with 2 other families, and each family had 2 kids. So this is 3-bedroom apartment. So the 3 mothers will share a very small kitchen. Each one have a little burner, and then they share 1 sink, and we share 1 toilet. All 3 families, each family have 4 people. So we grew up in that kind of an environment, right? And we have 1 room, the 4 of us, and everything was rationed at that time. It was, if you think about the earliest stage of Soviet or North Korea today, that was kind of like that, right? So everything was rationed, into sugar, soy sauce, everything. So my mom would give me a little book, say, go get this month's ration of our soy sauce. I would go to the corner store. It was barely empty, and then get it and then take it back. That was my memory. My sister had no memories of it, but I remember. So once you remember that, and then you went to countryside to see the worst toilet that I experienced on a field trip, you put things in perspective. Once you've seen the real misery, and everything is perspective, right? So I am that mother, and teach my kids, like I would be threatening that if you don't eat me out, I'm gonna send you back to rural China for a year. So yeah.
And you mentioned I think it was the 3 stages of that kind of early immigration process, and I'm guessing that the struggle being the first stage, like you were pretty well set up to deal with the struggle, it sounds like.
I think in spirit wise, right? And because the first stage is survival. When you're actually in survival mode, when you're in survival mode, you take you don't take anything for granted, any opportunity, and you hustle, right? And then you want to do that. So any opportunity you got, you take it, and you're grateful, and then you work hard and try to make the best out of it. So one of the key differences when I had this 20-some years career, and then from factory floor engineer all the way to executive in a very sort of a male-dominant industry, I would say, is because it's triple threats. It's engineering, manufacturing, and oil and gas, and then now tech, right? So, and for Chinese girl, like when I first started, so I didn't have the sort of a typical middle class kid, like my kids grow up. They have this vision for themselves, say, by this stage I'm going to do this, they have this trajectory.
You didn't have expectations.
No, I didn't have expectations. So anything happened, every stage, I'm grateful, and it's just bonus, because I start here, I'm grateful for my engineering job, that's why I started, and then after a few years I gained some confidence, and people say, you can be a manager. I said, can I?
All right, welcome back to Automate Live. Here on day one at Automate, we are just getting started, and I'm very excited for our next guest. We have Heather Carroll, CRO at Path Robotics. Heather, great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here, Chris.
And this is not our first conversation, nor is it the first time that Path and I'm Chris Lukey with Manufacturing Happy Hour. It's not the first time Path and Manufacturing Happy Hour have chatted. And actually, I believe it was a year ago, a little over a year ago, we were hanging out on your home turf in Columbus, Ohio, doing a live show. And that was around the time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Path Robotics, which really started as like a robotics welding company, was really starting to make that deliberate transition to being more of a physical AI company for the industrial space. You know, tell us about that evolution a little bit. What does it mean to be thinking bigger about how you're serving the industrial space at Path?
Yeah, that's it was probably about a year ago when you were there. I know I joined about a year and a half ago. And when we started out about 10 years ago in the basement of Case Western with two guys that were working on their PhDs that were born and raised in Ohio, that were working on AI and physical AI at the time for humanoid robotics and computational neural networks. They came out of that with an idea: how can we take what we've been working on and learning in school and apply that to the real world? And so, growing up in Ohio and working in their dad's fab shop and welding at the age of 8 years old, they realized that was a very, very hard problem that needed to be solved. And it seemed like one that AI was just primed to solve for.
Yeah.
So when the company began, we started out focusing on welding. And the idea was to go out and broadly talk to small manufacturers to learn what were the hardest problems and where did we see that we needed the most help. And in doing that, we began with welding, started collecting data. And over the last 8 years, we've got over 200,000 hours of real world welding data, which is incredibly expensive and difficult to collect. And you can't use synthetic data for training physical AI. So the evolution happened as we had more and more robots in the field, more and more experience collecting this data and training a foundation model how to weld. It became pretty clear that we were onto something very special, and we had a unique position with all of the data collected to broaden this and move more into upstream from just small manufacturers to mid-sized manufacturers, to now you'll see us working with very large companies solving very complex problems that physical AI is needed to solve.
Yeah, maybe let's go into physical AI a little bit further because, as you mentioned, hey, basement, Case Western, 10 years ago, Path has been in this space for a long time. So I'd love to hear your perspective as to why has physical AI become one of the biggest topics in the industrial space right now? You know, what challenges are manufacturers trying to solve where this could be the secret sauce?
Yeah. So welding robots and robotics in particular is not new. It's been around for 50 plus years or more. And so a lot of times people think, well, that has been solved. We can automate, automotive production lines, and there's lots of welding robots out there. But that's true for very, very high volume, low mix solutions. And so, where physical AI comes in is when you're working with environments where you have very high mix but low volume, you need something that can adapt. You need something that can see the joint type and the product that it's about to work on, and be able to recognize what it's looking at and make decisions and adapt. And that is where the training and the reinforcement learning comes for physical AI.
Yeah, adaptability came across loud and clear in that answer. I'm going to ask you about a slightly different topic now. A term that certainly you and I are hearing about more in the industry right now is reindustrialization, reindustrializing American manufacturing.
Yeah.
How does Path fit into this story about reindustrializing the American industrial base?
Yeah, so this one I get really excited about. This is probably where I spend the majority of my time, is working on policy initiatives and trying to help both small, mid-sized manufacturers and policymakers figure out how we can support one another. We have a great need in this country to reindustrialize our base. And the problem is, with the skilled labor shortage that we have, we are running into an issue where we've got demand. We can bring that demand in to reshore and bring manufacturing back, but we have a very, very big problem of skilled labor shortage. So how can we bring these two things together and help reindustrialize the base? And the answer is to provide automation that can augment and help with the labor shortage, not replace the workers, but focus on areas where we don't have the workers and be able to augment that. And so there is a wonderful spot for companies like Path and others in the physical AI space to help our manufacturers address this labor crunch and crisis and be able to bring back and reshore some of this work.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up tying in physical AI to that reindustrialization answer as well. The two are definitely inherently tied together. We will get back to physical AI in a little bit, but I also want to ask you about being based in Columbus, Ohio, right? You know, Case Western to Columbus. I mean, there's a lot of Ohio here. Why is it important to build a company like this in Ohio? What advantages are there to having so many manufacturers like at your doorstep in that area?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that is critically important when building solutions, particularly around physical AI, is domain knowledge. Welding is very difficult. It is an art, and it's very hard to do. And so by building a company in the heartland, in the core of the manufacturing sector, you've got access to a lot of people that have the experience and the knowledge that is required to bring that subject matter expertise in to train the solutions on what are the things that are unique to this space. And I think Columbus is great for that. In addition to that, we have great opportunities there with it being, everybody refers to it as Silicon Valley moving to the heartland. And so there's a lot of investment that's flowing into the space, and there's a lot of incentives and infrastructure that's being built around it, which makes it also a very exciting place to be.
Yeah, I remember when I think it was Drive Capital kind of started that trend back in like 2010. Columbus was one of those first hotbeds of like investment, not only in startups but like manufacturing startups as well.
Yeah.
You know, another question I have around Ohio is the state seems to be doing a lot of things right. Maybe this ties into your involvement in policy as well. The state seems to be doing a lot of things right in terms of like incentivizing manufacturing, making it a great spot for companies like Path to grow. What can other regions, other states learn from that? Because people are going to listen to this all across the country, maybe in some cases around the globe. What can other parts of, let's keep it here to the US. What can other regions learn from what Ohio is doing right?
Yeah, I would say I actually was in a policy session on Thursday at the University of Michigan, and we were talking about this topic. And the ARM Institute brought this up, that we should look for best practices. Where are certain areas of the country doing really well and moving the needle? And one of those is the Ohio Manufacturers Association.
Okay.
We should have a way and a mechanism for these other regional organizations to learn from one another, and that's a great example of it.
Yeah.
They're doing a great job. We're seeing lots of new manufacturing and incentives flowing in, so we should be sharing those best practices across the regional groups to try and help spread that knowledge and success.
So if I'm hearing you right, the Ohio Manufacturing Association is one of the more active, let's say, manufacturing associations out there that's driving real change, connecting community members, etc., and other states, regions, ecosystems have an opportunity to learn from that. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's go back to physical AI as we start to wrap up our conversation. When a manufacturer or an industrial company is successful with physical AI, what changes for their business? Paint the picture of that.
Yeah. So the biggest change is the ability to handle the capacity and throughput increases. What we hear often is I've got an existing facility that I've been in for 30 years. I
Mm-hmm.
can't afford the time or the capital expenditure to go and build a brand new
Yeah.
building. That's going to take too long. I'm seeing surge in demand right now. So, how can I accommodate this additional capacity in the square footage that I have today? So, when physical AI works well, they're able to take on that new work and deliver without being constrained as much as they are today by the labor shortage.
Mm-hmm.
So think of it as someone who has a facility now, they cannot start a second shift. They cannot find the labor to run a second shift. We hear this a lot. So demand is there, labor is not. So
Yeah.
how can we augment that with physical AI where we can extend the operation so you now can add that second shift and take on that additional work in the same existing footprint? And that's the type of thing when we do business cases with these small and mid-sized manufacturers that gets them most excited is this additional capacity, the additional orders and volume they can take on by being able to unlock that throughput.
Yeah. Demand is there, labor is not. Relevant to all our conversations around physical AI, relevant to all our conversations around reindustrialization. Let's look out just a little bit further. In the next 5 years, how do you see physical AI changing the way manufacturing gets done, and what role is Path going to play in that?
My hope is Path will play a very large role helping to be on the forefront with these manufacturers and be part of the solution. I think it's hard to tell 5 years from now. I mean, a year and a half is wildly different from where it was when I first joined. But I would say I think what we're going to find is these solutions are going to be deployed in more environments. And with more deployments, more data is collected. And with more data, we get better responses. We get better training of the models and better production. So my hope is that we see a lot more adoption and rollout of these solutions, and we see manufacturers continuing to grow and continuing to grow their business and
Yeah.
reshoring.
Well, it's an exciting time. It's exciting to see how Path has been part of that journey and continues to evolve to be relevant for years to come. It's always very fun seeing what you're up to. Hey, if you're out there, go to Columbus, Ohio. We've been talking about Ohio and Columbus. Get out there, visit them as well, like I did out there. Heather, always great catching up with you. Thanks so much for jumping on Automate Live.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll be back here with more interviews very soon.
This is
Yeah,
what
I mean,
I have.
Obviously, you want to step out of your comfort zone, but you probably obviously you want to step out of your comfort zone,
thinking
but
about
you
many years
probably
now. If your
at a
car
certain
is
point in
driving
your
at
career
60
have a
miles
pretty
an
good
hour,
idea
does the
of,
car have the luxury
part,
to
what you
wait for
can
the
and
clouds
can't
to
do.
tell it what to do?
And this is
I would say
where
no.
The big one is clearly TRI, the
sponsorship,
diffusion policy.
mentorship,
That was a big outcome for
and
us to
also
be able to show off this ability to do
your
imitation learning,
networking
where
kind
there
of
is no
a
writing
skill
of code. You
come
can
in.
teach the robots to do
Because
these really
at
complex
this kind of
behaviors.
juncture,
Can I foresee cars being
and
made?
I try to
One,
be
they
that
should be
person.
mostly
Once
software
I
defined in the
once
next
I
few years, and can they be
once
made
I
on a 100%
raised up
automated
and
line without any
rise
human
up and
touch?
then
Yeah,
become
I can
leader.
see that.
I
can
try to
see
be
that in
that
10
person
years.
for
I
others.
can't see a humanoid working
I'm
alongside
giving
me
back
in the
because
kitchen in the
I
next 10
know
years.
We're sort of
one
defined in our
sentence
intelligence by our
or
ability to use
one
tools, and if we look at all the ways we interact with the world around us,
one
I don't move a pallet by
exposure
lifting
at
it, I move
a
a pallet
crucial
by using a
meeting
pallet jack.
can
Why
change
on
this
earth would I
person's
make a humanoid
confidence
robot
and
that's gonna pull a
trajectory in
pallet jack
life,
around? What a
or just one
suboptimal use of all
referral
of
for
that
work,
complexity and all
right?
that
And then
capability. And so
I
think
don't really
we're
say
going to have
no
to kind of
when people
imagine
ask
for our
me
industry and for
you know,
our,
not
our
spam, but
economy
when people
this
ask me for
portfolio
LinkedIn
of
connections, I don't
robotics
say
that's
no.
going to
And when
do
they ask
everything that we
for,
want them to do,
can I have a
and
call,
not be attached
even as
to
a
the idea
stranger,
of a
if I look
particular
at the
form factor
profile,
being
it's
the right one
legit.
for everything.
I give
This is something that
20 minutes,
humans
half
have
an
been
hour
dreaming
phone
about
call.
for thousands
And
of
at
years.
least the first
The
one,
early
because
conceptions of the humanoid robot
I think
were
it
like
means the
third
world
century,
to this person,
BC
and then
China.
and
I
that
think the
that
Greeks
can
were even
change
writing
that
about
person's
things like
whole perspective.
humanoid robots.
And
So
at
we've
work,
been conceiving of
I
this as humanoid,
had
as
that
humans for
experience
thousands of
running
years
into
before we
really,
conceived
really,
of computers.
you know, great leaders and give you that opportunity. And then so once you have that backup of or a sponsor, it means huge difference, right? And then but I also run into toxic bosses, right? And so I see that those kind of bosses sort of crush other people's career or set other people back, and then I try to skirt around it and not to let that happen to me. Or if and then to try to avoid. So I pick my bosses so carefully because people quit jobs, they don't quit bosses. And then I follow bosses too, because I think for that exact reason, because that could make you have accelerated, or can set you back for years, and not just career. It can set you back mentally for years, right? And people don't realize that. So if you're a leader, if you listen to this, be very, very careful about the words that you say, especially to the people that's junior, just starting, because you say one word that could, 10 years later, if you told that person, I bet he or she still remember that word that you said to them. And that might define them for a long time before they can get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this in my own life, just sort of getting older, that it does feel like, whether in work or school or anything else, that those earlier years in your life feel so much longer and more consequential, because everything takes on a much deeper meaning, because everything is so much more formative at that period.
Yeah, I remember the first time a person say, the spot is, my manager at the time, and he's moving on, and he said, I'm going to do it. I said, who's going to be our boss? Who's going to be our manager? He said, well, why not you? I was so shocked. I was sitting there for a few seconds. What do you mean? You think I can do it? He said, of course you could do it. I was so, I remembered that moment. And then I was sitting there, and on the way back, I said, if he thinks I could do it, of course I could do it. But until that moment, I never really entered my thoughts that one day I could do it. Like, it's crazy, right?
So,
and then that yeah.
So that brings up an interesting question, though, and obviously, like, the people who need to be reached out to the most are the people probably who have the most difficulty asking for help, who are the quietest people. What do you do or how do you reach out to the people who can't ask for help?
To help people that, especially your leader, for when you actually have people from, like, with different sort of tendencies, attributes, right? Especially the introverted people, and this is very, very common for STEM majors, for engineers, for tech workers. A lot of them are introverted people, and in our society, especially in the West, we bias towards
Hello, and welcome back to Automate Live. My name is Jana Martin. I'm the Media Production Manager for the Association for Advancing Automation, and I'm so excited to be with Dan Howe today, my guest for this episode of Automate Live. Dan is the Regional Development Manager for LMI Technologies. Dan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So can just start us off. Tell us, what is LMI Technologies and what do
Obviously,
you do?
you want to step out.
So LMI Technologies has been in the machine vision industry for about 50 years. So we started a long time ago with lasers, single point lasers, and that turned into lots of different 3D technologies, laser lines, multi-line sensors, structured light area scan. We now have line confocal imaging. And more recently, we've introduced a set of 2D products. So 2D smart cameras.
Okay, awesome. So you guys are really covering the gamut.
That's correct.
What challenges are manufacturers facing right now when it comes to inspection? No doubt that's a key part of what you guys are focused on.
I think it's really, people are a little bit paralyzed with all the options that they have. There's a lot
in terms of solutions.
Solutions, correct.
Okay.
You've got, here at Automate, we have motion control with, you have linear slides and robots, and then when you get to machine vision, you have all these different techniques, different types of 3D techniques, different types of 2D techniques. And then you have all the software, which is like rules-based, AI.
Yes.
And it's really hard for people to say, okay, what solution do I need?
Right.
And that's part of why people perhaps come to Automate.
Yeah.
And try to figure out, okay, I'm going to look at different solutions, but also companies like us, like we're here to help people navigate that landscape.
And so just to help us out, what are you solving? Like how would I get started with my automation journey in LMI Technologies?
Sure. So like every solution involves all of those parts: motion control, imaging, software.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to LMI, what we're trying to solve is measurement, inspection.
Yep.
Sometimes it's robotic guidance, so we're the eyes of a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's optimization, so maybe you're cutting something and you want to know how to portion cut it, perhaps. So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah.
And there's different types of technology depending on the task that you're trying to solve.
Totally. And you want to pick the solution and not just find a technology that you want. You want to actually figure out what's going to solve your issue.
What's going to work? What's the most cost effective?
Yeah.
And what's the most robust? It has to work for a long period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so why is machine vision becoming such a critical part of modern factories?
So, when we think about automation, a lot of times we think about robots. Maybe there's a human being doing a task and it's very repetitive. Maybe it's dangerous, and you try to get a machine to do it, whether it be a robot or some purpose-built machine. But you need that spatial awareness. You need the eyeballs, and you need the brain, which is typically the software. So that's what really machine vision provides. It's both the imaging and the software. And so that's trying to replicate perhaps what a human can do or work adjacent to a human, and allow these tasks to be either safer, perhaps more accurate.
Yes.
And really improve the results of the factory.
Yeah, I mean, safety is a huge one. We love talking about safety here at A3, and without the vision of the machine can't see where it's going, you're going to have a lot of safety concerns.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so let's talk about like the ecosystem, the fact that companies don't need different vendors anymore, maybe.
Sure.
What makes LMI different from other machine vision companies in that way?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different technologies to deploy. So we're kind of a one-stop shop, whether it be 2D, 3D, and then different forms of 2D and 3D. And then in addition, we have a software platform that is universal for all of those technologies. You have to learn just one software platform. And that software does more than just the inspection portion. There's the whole setup that you have. So getting the right exposure, you might need to do some sort of alignment or calibration on the front end. And then you have whatever inspection you're doing. So that's either rules-based tools, perhaps some AI tools. And then you have the whole back-end part. What do you do with that information? And so that's things like PLC protocols to talk to the machine, and maybe an HMI, a user interface, so that you need all of that. And we have that whole spectrum.
You have it all.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does LMI approach machine vision differently from, let's say, your competitors?
Yeah, our intention is really to be a resource that people can go to, again, to help them navigate this complex landscape.
Yeah.
And so, I work with a team of business development managers that work with customers. And I would say the average tenure of my team is about 15 years in the industry.
Yeah.
So, bringing that experience, it's very rare that we run across an application that somebody gives us that we haven't seen before, something kind of like it.
Yeah.
And so it's our job to really be consultants for the people that approach us.
What are some of these most exciting real-world applications that you see come across your desk?
Yeah, we do everything. When I say everything, it's like anything that's built or made, we typically are involved in. And so there's some really cool, interesting food applications.
Ooh.
Like we work with a company that makes shrimp sorting machines that fly by at 3 meters a second. And that's how you get, equal sized shrimp, because they shoot them off into these bins based on their size and shape.
Wow.
But then, lately we've been using our line confocal. We've been getting more into medical applications.
Cool.
Which are, quality control is really critical. So like looking at the tip of a catheter or a stent.
Extremely precise.
Yeah. And then like lately with all of the AI, not just the software that we use, but you have a lot of semiconductor applications. So all the chips that process things, and those need to be inspected. And we're getting more into that as well.
Wow. So many opportunities.
Sure.
Where are customers getting the biggest ROI from their machine vision applications today?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. Obviously, if you can not let bad parts get out the door, then you're not, you're saving money with the scrap. But you also have to sort of like improve the process. So using the data that you get to work on the upstream process to make less defects. And that's really where a lot of the ROI is. Now, people talk about labor and replacing, a person, but that's not as effective. That is not as impactful, I think, as the cost savings on not having as much scrap.
Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's fast forward and kind of look into the future.
Sure.
You've been in this industry for a minute. We were talking beforehand. You've no doubt seen a lot of changes happen with AI.
Definitely.
With that kind of advanced trajectory because of AI, how do you guys look forward into the next 2 or 3 years? Where is this going?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that continue to advance. The imaging technology gets more accurate and faster. So you're getting, whether you have a 3D product or a 2D product, they all use cameras. And so cameras are getting, more pixels faster. There's different types of light sources, and that's all advancing.
Yeah.
And then when you add to that the software advancement, which typically is a lot of that is in the AI world, we're able to do things that we couldn't do 5 years ago.
So exciting.
But I think where a lot of the advancement now is more the agentic AI stuff, where you have software and you typically program it, but I think a lot of things that we do will be like type in a prompt and it will do what you need to do. And I think that's where most things are headed.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Okay, so we're here at Automate. You guys have a booth in the South Hall. It's 414.
That's right.
Make sure to stop by and see all the great stuff that you guys have. But
Sure.
just tell me, why do you guys come to Automate? You were saying you've been coming to Automate for many years.
I think
Why is
15 years ago was our first
15
Automate.
years ago? That's
Yeah.
awesome. Actually, here at McCormick Place.
Here in McCormick.
So why do you keep coming back?
It's for us. It's exactly the show. It's the perfect size and content. So there's other like big trade shows that have so much stuff to it that you kind of get lost. Like I think we went to not to make
We
fun
won't
of another
say any
show,
of
but
our-
there's
our
other
friends'
shows that
names,
I've done where it's like there's so much there.
Yeah.
And they're very different, and there's lots of different people that are coming for different things. Where when you come to Automate, you're trying to automate your process. I mean, that's literally the name of the show. And so it's focused. It's big, but focused. And so we have the right people walking around for
Right.
us. And
Right.
that's great because it's not like we're irrelevant to half the people, which is the case in certain shows.
Which is the right people is not only your customers, but also your partners, the other people in the industry that
Yeah.
you kind of work with.
Right. We sell to machine builders a lot and system integrators. And they are maybe not walking the show because they probably have booths.
Right.
But we also are impacting the end user, whether we sell to them directly or through a machine builder of some kind. Those are typically more of the attendees, and so they get to see what the technology does, and then they can talk to their machine builder or talk to their integrator and say, hey, I saw this technology. Have you worked with it? And then it's our
Talk to
job
me
work
about
with
it. There you
Correct.
go. I love it. That's awesome. Well, Dan, it's been so cool to learn more about what you're doing at LMI Technologies. I have no doubt the future is full of great things for you all. That's going to be it for this episode of Automate Live. Make sure to go and check out their booth in the South Hall, 414. We'll see you soon.
Obviously,
This is
you want to
what
step
I
out.
have been thinking about.
You could just give us like a clap in front of the lens.
This is what I have been thinking about for many years now. If your car is driving at 60
clap.
miles an hour, does the car
My name is
have
Michael.
the luxury to wait for the
I
clouds to
am
tell
16
you
years
what to
old,
do? I would say
and
no.
I am the
big one
driver
is clearly
and secondary builder for my team.
Policy. That
My
was
team name
a
is
big
Wizard,
outcome for us
and the rest of my
to be able
team
to show off
is
this ability
Tyler,
to do imitation
Chase,
learning, where
Marian,
there is no writing
Rahul,
of code. You
and
can
Olivia.
teach the robots to do these really complex behaviors.
Can I
This
foresee
is
cars being
one
made?
of, if not
they
the
should
biggest
be mostly
event we're going to go
software
to
defined in
this
the next
year.
few years, and
It
can they
has
be
some of
made
the top
in
teams
100%
from
automated
around the
line
country,
without
around the
any
world.
human
The
touch?
end goal for
Yeah,
every
I can see
season
that.
is to
I can
qualify
see
for
that
the
in 10
championship.
years.
This
I
is
can't
a
see
robotics
humanoid
competition.
working
It's
alongside
world
me in the
qualifying.
kitchen
It
in the
has
next 10 years.
We're
international
sort of defined in our
repercussions.
intelligence by our ability to use tools. And if we look at all the ways we interact in the world around us, I don't move a pallet by lifting it. I move a pallet by
It
using a
is
pallet
controlled
jack.
chaos
Why
at
on
best.
earth would I make a humanoid
The
robot
sound
that's
is all
gonna
over the
pull a
place,
pallet
the
jack
lights are
around?
all over
What
the
a
place. Does your
suboptimal
robot
use
work?
of all of that
What motors
complexity and
are
all that
running? What parts do
capability.
you
And
need?
so I think
The
we're going to have
successful
to kind
teams
of
can
imagine
take that
for our
chaos
industry and for
and tune it
our economy this portfolio of robotics that's going to do everything that we want them to do and not be attached to the idea of a particular form factor being the right one.
This is something that humans have been dreaming about for thousands of years. The early conceptions of the humanoid robot were like 3rd century BC in China. I think the Greeks were even writing about things like humanoid robots. So we've been conceiving of this as humans for thousands of years before we conceived of computers.
The robots we're competing with were built in about 2.5 weeks, which is half of what we would use as a normal build cycle. Last year, they had a terrible event here. They ended up with yelling and screaming between their own team members, and that's when they realized it was them that was holding them back.
Don't overcomplicate it, okay? It's first match of the season, keep it simple.
Last year, the break for us was communication. It's all communication. And it was very clear that there was a lot of work that we needed to do with our team.
Outtake. All right, yeah, just pick up the ball.
So I'm sure there's disagreements on stuff and how they would approach it, but they're working through that, they're navigating it, and that's critical to what you do every day in any field, but especially in robotics and manufacturing and automation.
The students that we see competing in events like VEX Robotics, they're going to really contribute to the future of robotics and automation. We need them to enter our workforce, and so we really like the outreach opportunities we have here.
Get mid. Mikey, that control zone.
We're playing the game Pushback.
Blocks into this long goal next to me. Their alliance partner pushing and shoving on the far end of the court.
Aries almost in a position to defend. Gives it up, goes for the park. OmegaBot's looking to match here at the last moment. That's tough.
That's so bad. That's not control zone, is it? Don't you need at least 2? Does that count? Such a bad match. We lost because of both the control zones. Hey, look, Tyler, balls do not matter. Control zones matter. I was telling him to match mode. We had 0 balls. I said don't overcomplicate it. You overcomplicated it.
First match, they lost a close match. The first thing they said to me when they came back to the pit is, "We get it. Our strategy was completely wrong."
The second we got out of the match, we had a conversation. We were like, okay, this is what we need to do. We do keep evolving, and like win or lose, we see things that we need to change. Everything's a learning process. That's really the whole reason we're here.
They're max loader,
Jeff Bernstein, the president of the Association for Advancing Automation. A3 is the world's largest robotics and automation trade association. Our mission is to educate companies on how to successfully apply automation. Education is extremely important to A3. Every company I talk to, they'll say the same thing. We can't find enough skilled people. And so these kids, with their passion and the skills that they're learning, I think are going to have limitless opportunities in the future.
We hope that as you advance your careers, that you'll look at some of our member companies in our organization to learn more about.
If you visit a VEX Robotics event, what you'll see is students with different talents. You'll see drivers, you'll see builders, you'll see project managers who run the teams. They're working with sensors, they're programming.
There's just a huge skills gap. Our member companies are saying to us, hey, we're having trouble getting people into these fields, and so we have to start to do something about it. How do you do that without looking at tomorrow, that next generation? That's always going to be our next thing in line.
There are the best teams in the world here, and if we make eliminations, it'll show that we can compete with them.
Where most of you watching have seen a few alliance selections. And normally when we're making a selection, an alliance selection, it's strategy.
Alliance selection it was pretty stressful. Yeah, so we weren't in picking position. Sadly, I knew we wouldn't be even close.
Arian was going around talking to teams. Me and Olivia were going around talking to teams.
The reason I think it worked well.
My teammate Arian, he went around to 25 different teams.
Arian especially was just shot. His legs were hurting. He would take 5 minutes and then get back at it because you want to play in elims. You want to keep going.
We can run our autos in conjunction if you guys want to do that. Just keep us in mind, okay?
These companies, the CEOs, they all say we need problem solvers, we need people that can work across language barriers, culture barriers.
They're communicating with our teams, they're problem solving. What they're doing is what's needed out in industry today.
1168A.
We graciously accept
your 2 seed.
A lot of the teams that I was hopeful for they kind of kept picking each other.
Bro, please. Come on, 4470 yo, please.
We would like to invite team 3150.
It hurts, but it's a part of robotics. Like, they're trying to give themselves the best chance to win.
When it was the teams that we talked to and they're like, yeah, we'll keep you in mind. When either they got picked or they were picking and they didn't pick us, it was like, oh no, like, our chances just keep getting lower and lower. We got to the very last team.
Has everybody made their case?
It's like a 25% chance here.
So, who do you select?
We would like to invite
5249.
They picked a team that wasn't us, and I thought that we were at the top of their list.
All right, well, we gave it our all, and if it wasn't meant to be, I guess it wouldn't be. The crowd of teams that didn't get picked started walking away, and then they were like, wait, there's no one going up to accept.
They're not here.
Then everyone started coming back, and we knew we had talked to this team, and we knew this was like our final resort. So we were like, okay, it was second wind of hope.
Are they not here? We are going to cancel this pick.
4478 mean.
We accept.
Congratulations to everybody in eliminations. You have 10 minutes until we begin.
It was a mix of like, oh my God, and it was mostly just pure joy. It was pure joy. Last year we didn't make it. This year we did, and I don't know. It was just awesome. It's probably an easier match than against 2 seed. Yeah, no, 2 seed's harder.
Driver control in 3, 2, 1.
Our opponents are some of the best teams in the world, and they played amazing offense. They were awesome. We were against 1st seed. We were 16 seed. I mean, all the odds stacked against us, honestly. It's funny is I feel amazing. I feel absolutely amazing about the event. We grew so much. We learned everything we wanted to and ended up getting to Elam, so I couldn't be happier.
I found this competition to be extremely inspiring. These kids are working so hard and obviously have learned so much just to get to this point. Failure is a critical part of the journey. You can't advance if you...
Hello everyone, my name is Win Harden. I'm the host of the Manufacturing Matters podcast, and today I'm lucky enough to be here with Nagesh Puppala, General Manager of Robotics at Intel. Nagesh, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Win.
You want to kick us off a little bit and tell us a little bit about what you do in the robotics division over at Intel?
Yeah, absolutely. I lead Intel's robotics and physical AI segment within our industrial and robotics division. We work closely with customers and partners bringing intelligence into real-world systems. What we're really focused on is how automation is evolving from fixed function systems to something much more adaptive. Automation is becoming more adaptive, not just more efficient. And that's where a lot of our work is centered today.
So really focused on this adaptive, advanced automation capability that AI and other technologies are bringing in to play. From your perspective, what is the biggest opportunity in industrial automation over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, a big part of my focus is really helping customer beyond pilots, right? And think about how the systems scale in production. That's where the biggest challenge seems to be in the industry right now. There's lots of demos, but not enough that is getting deployed in the production environment. So the industry doesn't need more AI demos. It needs systems that run reliably in the real world. That means solving for deployment, integration, and lifecycle, not just model accuracy.
And how is AI changing those expectations from those industrial customers as they move out into commercial scalability?
Well, the biggest opportunity is taking AI from isolated use cases into the scale deployment, right?
Okay.
That the value of AI is not the model, it's in what the system can do in the real world. And robotics is where that value becomes most visible.
And what are the hardest problems, in your opinion, sir, that the customers are facing when they're trying to modernize their operations through AI robotics?
Well, the hardest problem is not just building AI, it's integrating into real systems. You're dealing with sensors, control systems, safety requirements, and everything has to work together. So the real challenge isn't AI, it's making AI work reliably in the real world.
Okay. And does that, you talked about interfacing with legacy systems, so is that where these existing deployments today are falling short as we push these pilots out to commercialization?
Yeah, I mean, traditional automation is very strong at precision, but it struggles with variability, right? So it wasn't designed for dynamic environments. Traditional automation is deterministic, but blind. AI is intelligent, but unpredictable. The future is both.
So what do customers need to think about changing as they start to deploy more and more of these advanced robotic systems?
I mean, we need to think about the systems as integrated from the start. AI, control, and automation can't be separate layers anymore. So production systems need to be designed as complete systems, not stitched together.
Well, how does that affect deterministic control and real-time performance play in enabling trust? And I know there's a lot of questions about how to safety validate AI or advanced robotic systems. I don't know if you'd like to touch on that too.
Yeah, I mean, they are foundational. AI brings intelligence, but deterministic control ensures that systems behave safely and predictably. So in this case, AI decides, deterministic control guarantees execution.
So in your opinion, if I could just follow up on that really quickly, are advanced robotic systems, are they safety qualified at this point? I mean, is it always going to be in a cobot environment, or are we seeing, can you talk a little bit about how much trust level we can have in advanced robotic solutions and the safety?
Yeah, I mean, the safety certification is kind of crucial for the robotics, especially when they're working with the humans, next to them, and a lot of this existing robots are actually getting safety certified, but the physical AI systems, they're acting, sense, there's, the perceive, sense, and act. That's where I think the safety requirements are still a big challenge, and the whole system needs to be safety certified, not just the components of that.
I know there's a lot of work on AI safety certification of models right now, and I think we're going to hear a lot about that at this week's conference in Automate 2026. I expect that to be a big topic.
Exactly. In the digital world, AI can hallucinate. In the physical world, it cannot. So it has to have 99.99% accuracy.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it might, but we certainly don't want to be around if that happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be near that.
We don't want to be near that particular work cell. So we're how important is it on the software side? I know Intel generally comes at it from a hardware perspective, and of course we think about robotic work cells. We're talking about gatherings of data, I/O, and servos, and all the other physical things. But how important is software-defined approaches going to be to scaling out IRD solutions?
It's going to be super critical. Software-defined systems allows you to update and scale intelligence without having to redesign hardware every time. Redesigning the hardware is expensive, and so software-defined automation is what makes robotics scalable.
And in the past, if I could follow up really quickly on that, are we at an inflection point where the hardware basically is no longer the bottleneck? So that gives us the flexibility to redefine in a software environment purely the application as it stands? Is that whether we're talking at the edge, in the cloud, and other locations within the network? Is hardware out of the loop as being the bottleneck, essentially?
I won't say hardware is out of the loop. Hardware has to be capable, but I think software is going to drive how actual systems are going to get deployed. We are moving into, traditional AI, if I can call that, into more agentic AI world. And in the agentic AI world, you're going to have lots of small models running with the harness and an agent as a part of the agent. So how do you distribute that workload across the robot, as well as the edge environment, the edge server, or in the cloud, right? So either you would have the reasoning models running somewhere in the cloud. You could have the long-range planning models kind of running at the edge server on the prem, right, where the data cannot has to be maintained inside the on-premise, and then the latency-sensitive models and applications kind of run on the robot itself. So I think the distribution is going to happen. and the software is going to give us the flexibility, but you still need to have the hardware that should be able to accommodate and especially maintain the latency, right? I think latency is super critical.
This
in
is
this one,
what
right?
I
Sub 100 millisecond latency from vision to action. That's something that's very critical.
100%, both for safety systems and for adequate
In the
throughput.
21st century.
That's the point. We want flexibility, but not at the cost of production throughput.
Exactly.
So we've talked a little bit about, you've talked about the importance of going beyond the pilot. Like, let's get them on the shop floor. Let's getting our return on investment. And so what does production-ready AI plus automation system, what does it actually require for us to get to that?
Well, it requires a consistent integration across perception, decision-making, and execution, right? And it has to be repeatable across deployments. So production AI is not a model. And that's where I think a lot of focus is today. What we need is really, it's a system that can sense, decide, and act consistently at scale.
We've talked about the importance of doing a full integration, right? Not just looking at one part of the problem. So we need to look at perception, we need to look at legacy systems and everything else. So I was wondering if there was any kind of guidance you would give to a customer to say, okay, you're defining the system. It's not about just tacking an AI. You have an existing robotic work cell and slapping on a new software program. You're saying holistically we need to look at it as a full integration system. With all these elements coming into play. So I didn't know if you had any guidance that you would offer folks. You know, this is going to be a system that's flexible. It's going to be scalable. So make sure you're taking all these points into consideration so that you'll have that flexibility as this app evolves.
Yeah, I mean, today what we're seeing, a lot of people are developing models and they're working and fine-tuning the models, from, collecting the data and the real-world data, synthetic data, and all those pieces, right? And then there's the group of companies who are focusing on the real-time deterministic systems, right? When the pieces have to come together, that's where the real challenge happens. And this is where Intel is focusing on solving that problem. It's like, how do you take that model that's been trained with generic data and the synthetic data, tune it to the actual deployment environment? So we introduced something called Physical AI Studio earlier this year, and where any non-machine learning engineer can take that data and fine-tune that for the real-world deployment. Once the model is tuned, the next challenge is how do you integrate into the sensors and motors and the hardware, the robotics hardware, right? So this is where we just announced with Computex 2 weeks back what we call the OpenVINO Physical AI framework, which basically helps integrate that models into the robot hardware and be real-time and be deterministic.
It's interesting. We were talking about agentic AI coming over into physical AI space, and it made me think, I wonder how important skills will be, if there will be basic modular software elements that we will reuse, such as how to communicate with motors or servos or things of that nature, force feedback control systems. And I know that's kind of in the weeds a little bit, but from a geek's perspective, I bet you that'll be really interesting to see what's agentic, what is horizontal in nature and implies across many different agent applications. And you've touched a little bit on it with your physical AI tuning capability.
Yeah, I expect that there's going to be horizontal agents and there's going to be vertical agents, right? So there could be an agent that does welding, that's pick and move, that does, get a coffee cup or whatever that is, right? I think, so we'll have those agents, and then you have agents which job is to, hey, send this message from here to there, right? Or send a message to the motor. So which will be leveraged by the other agents, and there will be an orchestrator agent that will orchestrating all these agents together. It's like how to achieve a certain task, right?
Right on. So you mentioned the physical AI tuning capability, and you mentioned this new partnership to handle some of the connections and the physical modeling. Are there other elements that uniquely position Intel to be a great partner for companies who are trying to navigate this new physical AI world?
Yeah, I mean, Intel is, we are providing the hardware platform, and so we have a reference platform basically, where, our ecosystem partners can take it with all the right IOs, right sensors and everything, right, that's critical for this piece. Then we provide Robotics AI Suite, which basically brings all the pieces together, right, real-time operating system, and what I mentioned is a Physical AI Studio, OpenVINO Physical AI Framework, and the ROS2, all the different components, they bring all the pieces together. So we are providing this hardware, reference platform, the software suite, and then we work with a range of the ecosystem partners, right, from ODMs, ISVs, model vendors, robot OEMs, right? System integrators to make sure the whole ecosystem comes together. And that's been traditionally Intel's approach, right? We want to have the open ecosystem because this is not going to be a one company problem. It's going to require the village, as you would like to say, I think, to solve this problem. And this is kind of the scale of the problem I see going back to the 90s is like how the PC ecosystem came together, and Intel drove that PC ecosystem because it used to be very fragmented, and then we said, okay, there needs to be a common approach, and you need to define what that common approach looks like. You drive the standards and you drive the ecosystem, and everyone comes together and it starts humming, right? So I think that's what we're hoping that, that Intel can bring our learnings from the PC industry, from the server industry, how do we orchestrate the ecosystem to bring this to reality.
Well, there's probably not a single company on the planet Earth that has that kind of depth and expertise based on previous expertise and experience. Hard-won lessons for sure. Although you did just steal the thunder of my next question, which was to talk more about Intel's platform, what uniquely positions it. And I don't think you could possibly do better than that last answer you just gave us. So I really appreciate that. But sure. In the meantime, is there anything else that you want to talk about how to differentiate or how Intel views either edge from cloud operations or the significance about edge computing versus cloud before we kind of bring this to an end?
The physical AIs and robotics is not just an edge problem or a cloud problem. It's a end-to-end problem. It's a system problem, how things get integrated on the robot, how the workloads gets distributed across on the robot, on the premise servers, right? Where you will typically run the orchestration and, fleet management, all those things, and probably long-term path planning, as well as the reasoning models that you might run into the cloud, right? So it's a combination of a problem, and Intel is uniquely equipped to scale and solve the problems across the board. We have over 130 design wins today on the edge AI and robotics, different solutions from the partners using our Core Ultra Series 3, which actually uniquely combines our CPU, GPU, and NPU into a single SoC. So where you can run AI and control side by side, not separately.
Beautiful. So because I know that our schedules were conflicting a little bit, and even though there's a lot of Intel personnel here on the show floor at Automate right now, while this is happening, you and I are having to record this just before the conference. But I'm curious, can you speak to us before we let you go about the importance? You've talked about bringing together so many different technologies, software, hardware approaches, expertise levels, partners, ecosystems, everything else. How does that apply to, or what does that make you think about the importance of shows like Automate 2026 to move robotics and advanced robotics forward? Does this provide an important venue, position, idea exchange?
Oh, absolutely. This world is moving so fast, especially with the AI. We have seen that in the last 5 years. Since the ChatGPT, it's like came on board. And now the agentic AI, and it's hard to keep up nowadays. And unless we have the industry conferences like Automate, where the thought leaders from the industry can come together and actually talk about what challenges the industry is facing and how do we solve that together. As I said before, no single one company can solve this problem.
Right.
Industry has to come together. So Automate is a great place where all the companies involved in the manufacturing industry, industrial automation, they come together and share ideas, and I think it will be a great place for everyone to share their thoughts.
Fantastic. Nagesh, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you today. I really appreciate you carving out some time for us in this busy time of year, and I hope wherever you're at that you're having some safe travels.
Thank you, and I appreciate you, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure, sir.
This is what I have been thinking about.
Kindness is a parachute for failure, but it's a force multiplier for success. And when people are kind to kindness is a parachute for failure.
Thinking about for
it's a
many
force
years
multiplier
now.
for success.
If your car is driving
and
at
when
60
people are
miles an
kind
hour,
to each
does the
other,
car
especially
have
in
the
times
luxury
of
to
failure,
wait for
you
the clouds
can
to
fall
tell
back
what
on
to
each
do?
other.
I would say no.
It softens that blow. And we all have failures.
That was a big outcome for
we all
us
should
to
learn from our
be able to
failures.
show off this
But that doesn't mean it
ability
doesn't
to do
hurt.
imitation learning,
It hurts.
where there
But
is
when
no
you
writing of
surround
code,
yourself
you
with
can
kind
teach the
people,
robots to do
you
these really
actively
complex
make
behaviors.
kindness
Can I foresee cars
an
being
action
made?
word.
One, they should be mostly
It
software
makes a
defined
huge
in the next
difference.
few years,
Right?
and can they
the
be made
successes
in
are even
100%
higher,
automated
and the
line
lows
without
are
any human
a
touch?
lot
Yeah,
softer.
I can see that. I can
Yeah,
see that.
and the
10
lesson that I
can't
learned
see a
early on
humanoid
in
working
covering
alongside me
robotics,
in
and
the
this was
kitchen.
actually, I
next
think,
thing.
around
We're sort of
the
defined in our
first
intelligence by our ability to
TechCrunch
use tools.
robotics
If you look at all the
event
ways we interact with the world
at
around
MIT
us.
that you were
I
at.
don't move a pallet by
I
lifting
learned
it. I move a pallet
how
by using a pallet jack.
at that time, and even, you know, obviously to a slightly lesser extent, but even now,
suboptimal use of all
how
of that
small the
complexity and all
industry
that
is, how
capability.
in
So I
some
think
ways
we're
kind
going
of
to have to kind
insular
of
it is
imagine
in that
for our industry and
you really
for
are
our,
working with
our
the same people
economy,
over
this
and over
portfolio
again. You really
of
do like end up
robotics that's
connecting
gonna
with those
do everything
people that
we
you
want
went to
them to
school
do
with or that
and
taught
not be
you at
attached to
MIT,
the idea of a
you know,
particular
20, 30,
form
40
factor
years
that
ago.
might
So
This
just
is something
yet
that
another
humans have
reason
been dreaming
to
about
be
for
kind
thousands
to
of years.
people.
Like the
Yeah, I
early
mean, how
conceptions
amazing
of
is that,
humanoid
though? Like,
robot
I
were
know
like
you had Mark
third
Graber
century,
and
you know,
knew Mark
BC
back
in
in the
China. I
90s,
think the
and
Greeks were
he's an
even
amazing
writing about
person,
things
and
like
you know,
humanoid
Colin
robots.
Angle's
So we've
part
been
of the
conceiving of this
community
as humanoid,
as well,
as
and
humans
Cynthia Brazil
for
and
thousands
Russ
of
T.
years before
Drake,
we
and
conceived
like
of
these are
computers.
all they're friends. These are friends. We're really close to that community, and I think that we see this incredible technology in physical AI that we're developing, and that there's so much growth that can happen in that we don't compete. Like that's where I got a little allergic to that word. We don't really compete with each other. What we do is we try to lift each other up because it can have such a profound impact on people's lives in making the workplace better and making the home better and allowing us to actually, I mean, if you want to get super meta, I'm in this game because it allows us to be more human. Allows us to connect with each other even more closely, right? Our technology allows that. Of course, you have to be mindful of how you build that technology. You have to, so that people use it in the right ways and with the right protections and responsible and accountable for sure. But the goal, I think the goal that we all have is for allow us to be more intelligent, more capable, more human, more connected to one another.
There's competing, and competing isn't necessarily like always a bad word, right? I mean, there is healthy competition, but the nature of that competition, and we're kind of getting to this a bit of a transition period for you as we're again going down your CV. The nature of competition does tend to start to change a little bit as you move into the commercial space.
It does. I mean, I was a competitive cyclist for almost 20 years, and it is funny that, you know, I mean, I definitely know what competition can do, and I think that there's even something when you compete against somebody that you both have shared kind of the trials and tribulations. You both have gone through that pain, and I think that there's mutual respect there. When you
shared a very unique experience that only the two or very few of you have experienced.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's absolutely right, and especially when you compete with a team, like your teammates are part of your journey. Like I have from my cycling team back in the 90s and the early 2000s, we're still lifelong friends. Like my kids hang out with their kids, and you know, I mean, there's a real bond there. So, and I think that bond, to bring it back to robotics, is there in the robotics community. I mean, we know each other for sure. I mean, we couldn't believe when Amazon actually bought Kiva Systems in 2012. That was not that long ago, but in 2012, $785 million. I can tell you, every single roboticist said, "Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? A robotics company actually sold for something with the units of millions?" Right? I mean, it was kind of unheard of.
What's up, folks? We are here at Automate Live, day one of Automate 2026. And I'm joined by Juyun Cha, otherwise known as CJ of Dawn Industries, the founder. Welcome, CJ.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you here. My name's Chris Lukey. I'm the host of Manufacturing Happy Hour. And in the spirit of Manufacturing Happy Hour, let's kick off this conversation. Since Dawn Industries is really a brand new company, how would you describe what Dawn does as if you're having a beverage with someone.
Right. So Dawn Industry, in one line, is an AI native quality management system for manufacturing. But what it really does is it has all these security cameras and wearable cameras and then the sensors. So we combine all that to capture factory execution and then provide useful insights to manufacturers.
So CJ, one thing I have to start our conversation with is asking you about Y Combinator. I believe you're currently going through Y Combinator, and in the past, if people are familiar with it, right, it is an accelerator for young companies based in the Bay Area, but for decades, maybe not decades, but certainly for years, it was very much, software, SaaS. But I feel like there's a real appetite for manufacturing focused solutions. Tell us what your experience with that has been. Is that what you're seeing now within Y Combinator?
Yeah, I think manufacturing is a really big focus in Y Combinator now, because the current development of AI has enabled so much things like video, physical AI, and also just automating all the documents that are just so cumbersome in manufacturing. And I know around 3 people who's building in manufacturing space, just in our batch in Y Combinator. The partners who I interviewed to get into Y Combinator also love that we're focusing in manufacturing. And I think everyone in the tech agrees that manufacturing is a field that has to be innovated by AI.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you about Y Combinator specifically to Dawn Industries in a second. But before we get there, maybe we start with, where did you see the need for an AI native quality management system? Like, what's your background? What allowed you to say, hey, I think there's a market for this?
Yeah, so to give a short background of myself, I'm a founder from Brown University, but before that, I was from Korea. I've lived there my entire life. And back in Korea, my grandfather worked in shipbuilding. So I heard all these stories about the shipbuilding factory floor, how there's so much rework and downtime done that costs so much money. And still, because it's physical work, because it's this dirty and complicated environment, there's really no system to really fix that fundamentally. And then because I was doing coding since I was 17, I know all the AI, I know technology well enough to say that, okay, this is a space where AI can finally go in and innovate, because AI is different from other software solutions, that it has the innate ability to customize and understand by itself without having to be manually directed.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got that family heritage, grandfather
Right.
working in shipbuilding, you're working on coding, so that kind of brings these two worlds together. Tell me how you got connected with Y Combinator then, because that's a very unique way to, get a start in building your business.
Well, Y Combinator is obviously the tech student stream, but I've applied multiple times before, and I've actually applied with the same idea before about a year ago, and then I got rejected. And that was because I didn't know anything about actual manufacturing, and I didn't have any customers. So for a year, I spent at Brown. I just went depth into talking to manufacturers, getting our first 2 customers around Rhode Island and Massachusetts to deploy our AI systems and learn from them, learn their real pain points and what really has to be considered when deploying these AI systems. So that's how they saw my development, they saw my insights, and they decided to take a bet on me. So
yeah. CJ, that's an awesome story, and that's like a huge lesson for the folks out there listening to this that they can learn as well. Like, you got rejected by Y Combinator before, which quite frankly happens to most companies that apply, right? But you're like, okay, what can I do differently? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to learn about manufacturing. You mentioned you got your first 2 customers during that time. Tell us what it was like landing that first customer, because I think that's got to be a really cool part of your story as well.
Yeah, well, initially it was really intimidating because I followed my grandfather into a shipbuilding factory once before, but I've never done that alone. So I just went there. First one was aerospace and CNC machine shop. And then I went there, I see all these big machines and parts getting moved. And it was intimidating, but once I started talking to them, once I started talking to these people, I understood that they really they have an interest in technology and they want to solve their real problems. So they're really willing to tell me about their stories and tell me about what pain they're feeling inside these factories. So after that, it was just clear conversation. The sales process actually was pretty short because it was just one demo and they were like, okay, it's a no-brainer. Let's just do this.
What advice would you give to someone else that's starting a company that serves the manufacturing industry? Something you've learned during the time building Dawn so far?
I'd say just go through all your connections, just find one manufacturer, one pilot customer, partner, early partner, whatever you call it. Just have one manufacturer, learn from them, talk to them a lot to decide on your product. Don't just like, okay, I'm doing this and they need to buy this. That's not going to work. You have to understand the customers and pilot partners.
Yep. Great tips. Now let's get in more to what Dawn Industries is building, right? We've talked about AI native quality management systems. You know, it's continuously monitoring factory work to standardize work, diagnose issues. I could share some of the things that I've learned about your company so far, but what else would you share about what you're building at Dawn Industries?
Yeah, I think for Dawn Industries, there's 4 key steps. So one is the setup, which is just setting up security cameras, which most factories already have, or like simple wearable cameras you can attach here, like this mic I'm having now. And then with that setup space done, then there's 3 actual steps. So first is standardizing. That means because the SOPs that exist usually don't capture the tribal knowledge and the real execution, we first want to use the cameras to capture the senior expert runs for each production to define the golden standard and provide a video instruction. That can be used for training, which is a huge value because there's a lot of turnover rate in manufacturing, but that's just the beginning, and that really defines the golden standard, which allows us to move on to the next step, which is diagnosis. And this is the biggest part because I talked to bunch of different manufacturers, and downtime and rework, those 2 issues were the 2 biggest issues I've constantly hear from them that is costing them like 35%, up to 35% of their whole revenue. So I thought that, okay, if we can capture the video footage, if we can link to the current existing ERP or MES systems and machine logs, and we can combine that for the downtime, if there's a downtime event that's happening, do a root cause analysis to find what caused the downtime, to fix it quickly and also fix it quicker, and also put preventive actions to prevent that from happening. And then for rework, just while they're doing it, find the deviations that can cause quality issue and say that, okay, you have to do this before we just have to throw this part out. So that's the really big thing that the golden standard does. Because we have the golden standard, we can compare it against it, and we can find what was wrong. And then the last step is documentation. We automatically document, generate, manage versions, and update all the SOPs, quality documents, and NCR CAPA audit evidence, and everything that the manufacturer needs. That's all done through AI. So we're basically a big AI loop for the whole execution layer.
Yeah. All right. So to recap, find the golden standard. That's number 1, the ideal way of doing things. Capture that from your senior experts. Diagnosis, you mentioned downtime and rework are the 2 biggest things that you found. So if you're a manufacturer out there that's struggling with that right now and you need a solution, this is your guy. He's building a company to do this right now. And the last thing is the documentation that you bring in there as well. Is there anything like you wish I would have asked you about the solution so far? Something that hasn't come up, maybe an area that we haven't gone into about what you're building?
Yeah, I think I really want to talk about the integration aspect.
Okay.
Because a lot of companies I've talked to, they want to have this video systems, they want to have this AI system implemented, but they're concerned about, okay, how do we do cameras? How do we install the cameras? How do we integrate with this existing decades-old software? And I just want to emphasize that security cameras are enough for most of the things. You don't really need like these fancy HoloLens to capture anything. Security cameras are enough. And software integration systems is also, because development speed nowadays with AI is just so fast, it's really doable. So just don't be afraid about trying to put in our system. Just call us and we'll do the integration part for you, and you'll see the results very soon.
You know, we got a couple minutes left. I'm curious to hear about one other part of your story. You mentioned you had a background in coding. I'm curious, did you always know you wanted to go into the industrial space, the manufacturing space, or was this something that, was, part of your family's background, but maybe surprised you that you got into it? I'm curious to hear a bit more about that part of your story.
Yeah, well, that's actually very funny because I always knew that I wanted to be a startup founder, and that's why I came to the US. But I wanted to started multiple startups, and one of the companies I knew that had to be industrial because I'm really into automotive, aerospace, and all these different cool fields, electronics, that is just really the foundation of our economy. And I kind of knew that I would found, even if that's not my first company, I would eventually build that industrial coding space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CJ, what advice would you give to other young folks, the next generation entering the workforce? What would you share with them about what makes this industry such a great place? Whether it's building a company, whether it's just working with, a large manufacturer, small manufacturer, all shapes and sizes. What would you share with that next generation out there?
Yeah, I just want to say right now, American dynamism is just a big problem. America's losing the capacity to manufacture critical things from aerospace, defense, shipbuilding to just like even small electronics good is just going offshore, and just working in this space, working to protect our economy, protect the critical capacity to build in our economy is just such a meaningful thing that I think that gives me the motivation to work, get up, stay up at night every single night. So
do you see a bit of a vibe shift in Silicon Valley and in California where more folks are thinking about building physical products, serving the manufacturing space? You mentioned American dynamism. I've come across that from A16Z before as well. Are you seeing more of that appetite in that area?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a bunch of different people approaching manufacturing and all these legacy industries in a different way, and I think AI is just a big powerhouse that's enabling that.
Yeah. As we wrap our conversation, is there anything you wish I would have asked you, or a final call to action that you have for the audience?
Yeah, so just to the manufacturers who's watching this, if you are facing downtime and rework problems, if you are stuck with not being able to train new workers, or just all these like different documentations that's just taking you so much time, contact me. We'll set up a demo and we'll show you how we can prove the metrics instantly within a month. So yeah, this is Dawn Industries.
And CJ, where can folks find Dawn Industries?
Dawn Industries, you can email me at juhyuncha@dawnxr.com. It's JOOHYUN_CHA@dawnxr.com, or 401-226-3503. That's my number. So you can text me too.
Heck yeah. Well, hey, we got CJ out here building the future of manufacturing. We're so happy to feature you here on Automate Live. I've been Chris Lukey with Manufacturing Happy Hour. We'll catch you back here for more interviews very soon.
Thank you.
Kindness is a perishable. It does seem that way, and I will tell you that in my career I've been very blessed. It does seem that way, and I will tell you that in my career I've been very blessed.
If your car is driving at 60 miles an hour, does the car have the luxury to wait for the clouds to tell it what to do? I would say no.
I was, of course, approached by some of the big tech companies during that time. I'm like, hey, I'm happy what I'm doing. I'm good. I like what we're doing. When Amazon came, it was a little bit different, and I'll tell you why.
Can I foresee cars being
My
made?
journey is kind of from
They should be
rockets to
mostly
robots,
software
for
defined in
sure.
the next few years, and can they be made in 100%
Amazon
automated
came
line
to town,
without any
and
human touch? Yeah, I can see
we
that.
had the initial
I can see that
conversation.
in
It was
10
about
years.
application.
I can't see a humanoid working
Right? It
alongside
wasn't
me
just
in
in the
the kitchen
digital world.
We're sort of
It was
defined
about
in our
true
intelligence by our ability
application.
to use tools.
And
if
if
we
it's
look
something
at
that I
all the
learned
ways
at
we interact with the
MIT,
world
which is
around
that
us, you know, I
that
don't move a
forcing
pallet by lifting it. I
function
move
of
a pallet by using a
constraints
pallet
and
jack.
making
Why
something
on
work in the
earth
real
would I
world.
make a humanoid robot
And
that's
also,
gonna
I had
pull pallet
a
jack around
giant
with a
advantage of now this
suboptimal
actually
use of all of that
ties
complexity and all that capability. And so I think
e-commerce
we're
and
going to have
aerospace
to kind of
together. Is that
imagine
when you're at the
for our
scale of
industry and for
Amazon,
our economy
you
this
ship
portfolio
literally
of
billions and billions of
robotics that's
packages,
going
like
to do
literally,
everything that we want them to do.
then precision
and not
matters.
be attached
Like
to the
you
idea
can't be,
of a particular form
9
factor
out of
being
10
the right
good.
one.
You have to be 99.99.
This is something that humans have been
That's like
dreaming
what we
about
think
for
in aerospace
thousands of
terms.
years. Like the early conceptions
High reliability,
of the humanoid robot
high
were like
quality.
3rd
So I
century,
knew I had an advantage
BC
there.
and
But
China.
I was
I think
really
the Greeks were
impressed
even
with
writing about things like
the
humanoid
fact that
robots. So we've been
they
conceiving
have
of this as
purpose.
as humans for
They have
thousands of years
purpose,
before we conceived of
right?
computers.
And if you're listening to this podcast, no matter what field that you're in, you need 3 things. And I credit Pam Reeves for really sharing this with me. You need purpose, you need strategy, and you need operations. Purpose, strategy, and operations, right? The purpose for Amazon is really straightforward. Have the world's largest selection of goods at a low cost, delivered right to the customer's door. That's our purpose. And that has shown that works. And when you do it well, you spin the flywheel, as Jeff calls it, and it continues to grow jobs and grow opportunity. Our strategy is actually really straightforward. Our strategy, of course, is in our leadership principles that Amazon has, but you even hear Andy talk about it. Like we tend to operate like the world's largest startup. And I like that. I like that scrappy mentality. I like the experimentalist mentality. I like the let's go build type of thing, build things mentality. And in robotics, one of the things that is very obvious, I think is obvious, is that what we're trying to do is have a world-class capability in the basics of robotics. Not the hype of robotics, but the basics of robotics. Can we move things? Can we manipulate things? Can we store things? Can we sort things? Can we perceive the world around us? And can we pack things? Just the basics. Some you might call them primitives. And in order to really achieve a world-class capability in this, you need that project context, the purpose that we have, right? So that's our strategy. We want to have a world-class capability in just the basics. And if we can eliminate the menial, the mundane, and the repetitive with the basics, that's going to be better for our employees. That's going to be better for people. All right. So now our operations turns into how can we enable people with the best tool set possible out there? How can we create a safer environment for our folks with robotics? And how can we have our folks be more productive using that tool set? That is a really hard problem. The onus isn't on the operator. The onus is on us, the roboticists, in order to make our tools simple, not complex, or in order to make our tools actually have utility and to have the high reliability in the real world. That gains us a tremendous advantage, because when we do that, that spins that flywheel back to we're getting better at the basics. Now, if you want that was a long way to get to why I get really excited and why I even took this job. You have to be able to think all the way through that life cycle. And I do believe that what Amazon is doing in robotics is truly pioneering work. And I do believe that by mastering the fundamentals of robotics through application will allow us not only to transform e-commerce as what we have seen. We've created hundreds of thousands of jobs. We've created a safer environment for our employees. We have, 1.5 million plus employees out there that we use our robotics for. But I believe that the fundamentals of robotics will actually start to transcend different sectors, whether it's in agriculture or it's in fishing or it's in automotive or it's in healthcare, that the work that we're doing, this collaborative robotics philosophy that we have, will actually start to impact these other areas. And when we do that, that's actually creating a very positive change for the world. It's allowing us to be more intelligent, more capable, and more human to each other, and still with the greatest value of human-to-human connection, with the greatest value of a person having a great job in a safe environment and allowing them to do productive things, right? That excites me. And there's no other
Hello, welcome to Vision Standards Update. We're from the G3, the leading vision associations across the globe. My name's Bob Makura from A3. We've got Yan Peck representing EMVA, Masahito Watanabe representing GIA, and Supratik Banerjee representing VDMA. So we basically coordinate our standards development across the globe, so that we don't, so that we do it as efficiently as possible. We represent 3 regions, 5 associations, and we just want to give you some brief updates from each of our groups. Little order of business, we'll do a more detailed standards update tomorrow in the conference track, Tuesday at 11:15 a.m. in S403AB. So regarding A3 standards, our GigaVision standard is really the newest update. The standard was released in May of this year, represents 5 years of work of the technical committee, and basically breaks the 10 gig barrier. It uses RDMA, a streaming protocol, in addition to being backwards compatible with our existing streaming protocol. It uses a particular flavor called Rocky V2. So the big thing, as long as you have a network interface card that supports Rocky V2, you'll be able to break the 10 gig barrier. Most of the major NIC manufacturers, Mellanox, Broadcom, Intel, have Rocky V2 compliant network interface cards. So you'll start to see cameras getting very fast over standard low-cost Ethernet equipment. Really exciting. We are developing a logo so that you'll be able to know which cameras use RDMA. So look for that very soon. All right, I'd like to pass it over to Jan to give an update from EMVA.
Thank you. For standards developed under the hood of EMVA, there's one big update regarding the EMVA 1288 standard, which is what is actually standard for defined measurement of camera parameters, and also providing standardized data sheets which could be used by any buyer and any customer comparing products of different vendors, because you have then some standardized way how you can compare parameters of different products, really apples to apples. You don't compare something different. You don't need to do any extra special evaluation for each sensor or camera you would like to buy. And this standard is developed for quite some time, but a big achievement now is that it's going to turn into international standards under ISO. So that local industrial standard is turning into global worldwide ISO standard. That's going to happen pretty soon. Also, one big update about 1288 is that so far there have been two different camera models, linear and general. With recent update of the standard, we merged these two together. So there's currently one common standard covering both models of the sensors. Another very big part of EMVA standards is GENICAM, what stands for Generic Interface for Camera. It defines software layers which are used by all the cameras from our standard groups, which is defining, or the standard defines software API, software layers, how to control the camera, how to discover its features, how to set streaming, how to receive the streaming data from the camera, all independent on the actual physical layer. That API, meanwhile, become really very, very big one, and is not really useful for today edge applications, embedded applications. So the latest effort is to bring some alternative called GenFIA, Generic Feature Access. That's a code name for development. Might not be the final name, but the purpose of that is to have some embedded application-friendly alternative to that fully featured Gen API, the generic API, which will not rely on parsing huge XML files provided by cameras. It tries to introduce some very lean API, which could be implemented in tiny edge or embedded devices. That would be probably all from my side.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Masaki Watanabe from GA. We have big update facing for the Quark Express 3.0 will be released by the end of this year. It will be available to use Kappa connection using, of course, coaxial cable that is up to 25 gigabps speed per cable. That is really a essential thing that keeping the high-speed solution for that, especially for customer who want to use copper line instead of optical. Of course, optical connection is really a robust, and we can expect to have a noise-proof solution. So the Quark Express 3.0 is also merging the standard as a standard with fiber solution as well. We also have a new update from SWSEC that is also a speed up to 12.5 gigabps per channel. That's going to be speed up, supporting speed up signal transmission from sensor to outside. The key thing that we also focusing on is a capability of the sensor signal output directly to optical to outside. That would be really beneficial for the small cameras and low power consumptions. That's going to be really key for future development for especially for robotics. We also working on the lens connect, which is controlling the lens from including camera that is cooperating with EMBA. That's going to be a more effective solution for robotics, and also many of systems which need to controlling the lens itself. That is what we are now working on. So.
Perfect. So thank you so much. I'm representing the VDMA here, and from the VDMA's perspective, we bring two standards to the G3 table. One of them is 2632, which is official name is VDI, VDE, VDMA 2632 set of standards, and the other one is OPC-UA for machine vision. So first I will talk about 2632, why we have this standard in the first place. The objective or the goal of this standard is to remove all kinds of misunderstandings. So when the supplier is talking about, let's say, illumination, the definition of illumination that the supplier is using and the user is using should be the same. So the aim of the 2632 series of standards is to just remove all sorts of misunderstandings that may be there between the supplier and the user. And there are 4 parts to it. The latest update is that part 2 has just been updated, and it will be released to the public soon. Now, this brings me to OPC-UA for machine vision. OPC-UA for machine vision is a standard that models the vision system with its components and the system in itself, but it looks at the system with respect to different use cases. The primary use cases for OPC machine vision are asset management and condition monitoring, so that you can really see details like identification information, serial number, manufacturer, model number, warranty information, when is the next service, when was the previous service done, calibration, and so on and so on. So this OPC-UA for machine vision looks at this and tries to model this entire thing. Part 1 of the standard was already released in 2019, and part 2 of the standard has been also released 2 years ago. So they are ready for use, and we see them at the booth there, where we bring in all the standards under one roof, and we call it the G3 demonstrator, and we encapsulate all the standards using OPC-UA for machine vision. So if this goes out to the people who are watching this live and are visiting the show,
our booth, please visit our booth and we will show you a demonstration of all the standards that we have under the G3.
Great. And just to finish, yeah, we're in booth 32046, right near the Automate Live studio. So please come visit us, and we'll show you some of our standards and what standards can do for you. Thank you.
It does seem that way.
You tend to be pretty pragmatic. You tend to be pretty transparent, and it strikes me that maybe you tend to be pretty pragmatic.
I have been thinking about for many years now. If your car is driving at 60 miles an hour, does the car have the luxury to wait for the clouds to tell it what to do? I would say no.
The big one is clearly TRI, the diffusion policy. That was a big outcome for us to be able to show off this ability to do imitation learning, where there is no writing of code, and you can teach the robots to do these really complex behaviors.
Can I foresee cars being made? One, they should be mostly software defined in the next few years, and can they be made on 100% automated line without any human touch? Yeah, I can see that. I can see that in 10 years. I can't see a humanoid working alongside me in the kitchen in the next 10 years.
We're sort of defined in our intelligence by our ability to use tools, and if we look at all the ways we interact with the world around us, I don't move a pallet by lifting it, I move a pallet by using a pallet jack. Why on earth would I make a humanoid robot that's going to pull a pallet jack around? What a suboptimal use of all of that complexity and all that capability. And so I think we're going to have to kind of imagine for our industry and for our economy this portfolio of robotics that's going to do everything that we want them to do, and not be attached to the idea of a particular form factor being the right one for everything.
This is something that humans have been dreaming about for thousands of years. The early conceptions of a humanoid robot were like 3rd century, BC in China. I think the Greeks were even writing about things like humanoid robots. So we've been conceiving of this as humans for thousands of years before we conceived of computers.
So that people are properly calibrated, and that we have credibility. We as an industry, as a humanoid industry or sector maybe of the robotics industry, we really spent a lot of time trying to gain credibility of humanoids. Coming off the DARPA Robotics Challenge, a lot of people were very skeptical about the commercial viability of humanoids. And so we've tried to really be, thoughtful about how we do this. And there's really smart, credible people, both at the customer site and at the developer site, really working on this. And we have reached an inflection point, and that's really exciting. But there's still a lot of work ahead as we're moving forward.
Yeah, let's say hypothetically there was another humanoid robotics company in the sort of general area that you're in Austin. Let's say it rhymes with Bezla, hypothetically. In terms of these like unrealistic timelines and expectations, is that something that can ultimately just do damage to the space at large?
Well, I think a lot of these things are a double-edged sword. So I think, that company is generally optimistic and very aggressive about timelines, but has ultimately delivered on many of the things that they've aimed to do, even if not, directly in the timelines. And so I think for the space overall, it has captured the imagination of the public. But I do think if you're not careful about it on the other side, that you could disappoint a lot of people. I think it's early for humanoids in the industrial space, period. I think it's certainly early for humanoids in the home. And so I think just, I want a robot in my house. I'm tired of folding laundry and doing all these things, but I think it's early. And I think we just want to make sure that we're sort of tempering ambition with, humans have been conceiving of humanoid robots longer than we've conceived of computers, right? We had this, what if you had a mechanical human that could do all the things that you didn't want to do? Like, this has been in our consciousness for a long time. And now here we are, we're in 2025, we can do it. We have real humanoid robots, and that's amazing. So let's not overblow things. Let's make sure that we're mindful about expectations and do it right.
Yeah, when we talk about home robots, it strikes me that to a certain extent, robotic vacuums have been kind of an evolutionary dead end. I mean, they're continuing to improve on them. They're doing mapping and things like that. But in the 20 plus years that Roomba's been on the market, it hasn't, led to a fundamental sea change when it comes to getting robots in the home. Now we're having a conversation about having it approaching it from the entirely different direction, approaching it from highly complex, highly expensive machines, starting in industry, and then eventually making their way into the home. Do you feel like with the work that you're doing that there's a straight shot from a warehouse to a house?
As we looked at humanoids, and as I continue to look at robotics, there were a few things that stood out as really critical in commercial environments. One is you want to be safety rated and safety rated, because most of these process paths that aren't going to be automated in some other way benefit from being able to work in and around humans. And if you're trying to work in and around humans, you don't want any risk of falling on a human, injuring a human. And when you have a balancing system, that's very tough to guarantee, right? Because any glitch between sensing and electrical and actuation can cause an instability that causes that robot to fall, right? And so that was the first thing was, and then you ask yourself, do you really need bipedalism? And then, in commercial environments, people are moving things around with the assist of wheels, of carts, right? Or powered, equipment. And so you're not carrying things up and down stairs that might exist in apartment buildings in New York City trying to move in and out, but that doesn't exist in a commercial warehouse, right? Nobody's really carrying things up and down stairs. There's not a real need for bipedalism. Yes, there are ramps and lips and things like that, but you can get over those with wheels, with maybe some degree of suspension, active or passive suspension. So you don't need bipedalism. You don't need quadrupeds either, right? Like good wheels, the right size wheels, the right size suspension will help you in whatever you need to do. You really want swappable batteries. Nobody in humanoids is really solving. Like if you have to sit on a charger, you lose. Look, we as humans, we sleep 7-8 hours a day. We lose a third of our productivity every day to sleep. Right? Why would you do that in an industrial environment if you could avoid it?
You either lose productivity or you have to buy 3 times as many robots.
Or you have to buy 3 times as many robots. That's right. And you need a whole bunch of space for the robots to park as they charge. I'm even more bullish that sitting on a charger is, or maybe more opinionated that sitting on a charger is a completely horrible use of a robot. Your whole goal of a robot is to be operating in production continuously, right, and taking on meaningful work. And so sitting on a charger doesn't make any sense. You really want your sensors not to move around and not to move up and down. So the problem is if you're a balancing system, your sensing is always moving around, and so you have to then compensate with your AI algorithms for the fact that your sensors are never stable, and so your calibration's a lot harder. Anyhow, there's just a whole bunch of and the cost, the amount of, and then I think the biggest problem is they're not strong enough, right? You can't get the torque density in one of these shoulder motors to be able to lift what humans can lift. And look, we use linear actuation in our
tend to be pretty
we looked at humanoids,
tend to be pretty pragmatic. You tend to be
and as I continue to look
transparent,
at
and
robotics,
it strikes me
there
that
were a few things
maybe
that,
to a certain
that
extent
stood
your job
out
is,
as really
if not
critical in
tempering
commercial
expectations, then
environments.
at least
One
setting
is
realistic
you want to be
expectations
safety rated and
about
safety rated,
things
because
like
most of these process
timeline
paths
and scaling.
that
Yeah, well, I
that
appreciate
aren't
that.
going to
I
be
try to
automated
do
some
that.
other way.
I've been
benefit from being able to work
dreaming
in
about
and
this
around
stuff
humans.
since I was a kid.
And if you're trying to work in
spent
and around
most of my
humans,
adult life now,
you don't want any
trying to
risk of
commercialize
falling on a
humanoids,
human, injuring
not
a
for the faint
human.
of heart.
And
last
when you have a
decade.
balancing system,
I think an interesting point that I like to make is that
very tough to guarantee.
this is something that humans
right?
have
because
been
any glitch
thinking
between
about
sensing and electrical
for thousands of
and
years.
actuation
We were
can
conceiving of
cause an
humanoid
instability that
robots,
causes that robot to,
in
to
3rd
fall,
century
right?
BC
And
China,
so that was
automata.
the first
And
thing
so
was. And
it's
then
amazing,
you ask yourself,
right?
do you
We're
really
now
need
at this point in
bipedalism?
human history,
And then,
1,000 years from
in
now,
commercial
we'll all have
environments,
been
people are
alive at
moving
this
things around
moment
with the
where
assist
it was
of
suddenly
wheels, of
possible
parts,
to do this,
right?
to build machines that can do
or
some of the
powered,
things that we do.
Equipment.
And so we don't need to
so you're not
overstate
carrying
sort
things
of
up
where
and
we're at.
downstairs.
That's
that,
an amazing moment. And
that
now
might
this
exist in
technology,
apartment
we've been
buildings
working
in
on
New York
this for a
City trying to move
decade
in
to
and out,
mature
but
it
that
from
doesn't
the lab
exist
and to get it out into
in a
the real
commercial
world.
warehouse, right?
And
Nobody's really
it's
carrying
here.
things up and downstairs.
But it's early.
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to.
Yes,
Obviously,
there are
you
things
want to step out.
things like that, but you can
and
you
so
can
I
get
think
over
we
those
just want to be
with
mindful
wheels,
of
with
what that's
maybe
going to
some
take.
Yeah, I
what
mean,
that's going to look like
active or passive suspension,
so that people are
you
properly
don't
calibrated,
need bipedalism,
and then we
you
have
don't need
credibility.
quadruped
We,
either,
as an
right?
industry,
Like good
as a
wheels,
humanoid
the right size
industry or
wheels,
sector, maybe
the right
of
size
the
suspension
robotics
will
industry,
help you. And
we really spent a lot of time.
You really
trying
want
to
swappable
gain
batteries?
credibility
Nobody
of
in humanoids is really
coming
solving.
off the DARPA Robotics
Like if you have to sit
Challenge,
on a charger,
people
you
were
lose.
very skeptical.
About
look, the
we
commercial
as humans,
viability
we
of
sleep
humanoids.
7-8 hours a
And
day.
so
We lose a
we've
third of
tried
our
to really
productivity
be,
every day to sleep.
Thoughtful
right?
about how we
Why
do
would you
this,
do that in an
and
industrial
there's
environment
really
if you could
smart,
avoid it?
credible people,
You either lose productivity or
both
you have
at
to
the
buy like
customer
3
side
times as many
and
robots.
at the
Or
developer
you have to buy
side,
3 times as
really
many
working
robots.
on
That's
this.
right. And you need a whole bunch of
we
space
have reached
for
an
the
inflection
robots to
point,
park
and
as
that's
they
really
charge.
exciting, but
I'm even more bullish.
there's still a lot of work
sitting on a
ahead,
charger is,
as we're
or
moving
maybe
forward.
more opinionated.
Yeah, let's say
Sitting on a
hypothetically
charger
there
is
was
completely horrible use of a
another
robot.
humanoid
Your whole
robotics
goal of
company
a robot
in the
is
sort
to
of
be
general area that you're in
production
Austin. Let's say it rhymes with
continuously,
Bezla,
right? And taking on
hypothetically.
meaningful work. And so
In terms of
sitting on a
these like
charger doesn't
unrealistic
make any sense.
timelines,
You really want
and
your sensors not to
expectations,
move
is that
around.
something
and
that
Obviously,
move
you
up
like-
and
you wanna
down.
step out
The
of
problem is if you're a
damage
balancing
to the
system,
space
your
at
sensing
large.
is always moving around. And
Yeah,
so
I
a lot of
think
these
you-
things
you
are
alluded
compensate with
a
your AI
double-edged sword.
algorithms for
So I think,
the fact that your
that
sensors are never
company,
stable, and so your
is,
calibration
if
is
you
a lot
look
harder.
at the
is
scale
generally
There's just a whole bunch of
optimistic
reasons, the
in
cost,
terms
the
of
amount of
combined
and then I think the biggest problem
company should have
is
actual
they're
physical
not
what has
infrastructure
ultimately
for data
delivered on
and
many of the
right?
things
You
that
can't
they've,
get the torque
aimed
density in
to
one of
do,
these like
even if not
shoulder motors to be able to
directly
lift
timelines. And so I
what
think,
humans can lift.
I think
and look,
in
we use
the
these
space
we use
overall,
linear
it has captured
actuation
the
in our muscles,
imagination
and
of the
we're very,
public.
very finely
But I do
tuned
think
for
if
it.
you're not
You know,
careful
our
about it
robot
on the other
Proxy,
side,
which is a
that you could disappoint a lot of people.
is more of the form factor that
I think it's
obviously
early for
espouse,
humanoids
4
in
wheels
the
on the ground.
industrial space.
The
period.
latest generation can lift 200
I think it's certainly
pounds.
early for
right now it does
humanoids
that
in the
because it
home.
has a
and so I think
screw
just
drive in the
I want a
spine,
robot in my house,
right?
which
is a much
tired
better
of
way
folding
to
laundry
get torque, right?
Doing all
now,
these
if you
things,
or I had a screw drive
but
in
I
our
think it's
spine,
early,
like we could lift
and
a
I think
lot
we
too,
just
right?
want to make sure
and
that
so
we're
you actually
sort of
want
tempering
robots that are more
ambition
capable than humans.
with what's
right?
realistic.
You want to
Because
move move
like I said,
1,500-pound
humans
carts
have been
around,
conceiving of humanoid robots longer than we conceived of
4 electric wheelchair motors.
Obviously, you want to step out of your comfort zone, but
you could do all the things that you didn't want to do
without any trouble.
This has been
You or I moving 1,500 pounds, we can do it, but we're using a lot of shoulder, a lot of quads,
and now here
to
we
try to
are.
get that
We're
moving.
in 2025.
And
we can
the
do it. We
humanoids just
have
don't quite have
real
that strength.
humanoid
And
robots, and that's amazing.
So I think where I became kind of disillusioned was
let's make
you
sure
didn't need
that
bipedalism, you needed safety rating, you wanted battery swap, you wanted something really strong, you wanted the sensing to be stable.
When we talk about home
you were
robots,
just never going to
it strikes me
get that
to a
if you
certain
constrain
extent,
yourself to the human form factor.
Robotic vacuums have been kind of an evolutionary dead end. I mean, they're continuing to improve on them. They're doing mapping and things like that. But in the 20 plus years that Roomba's been on the market, it hasn't led to a fundamental sea change when it comes to getting robots in the home. Now we're having a conversation about having it approaching it from the entirely different direction, approaching it from highly complex, highly expensive machines starting in industry and then eventually making their way into the home. Do you feel like with the work that you're doing that there's a straight shot from a warehouse to a house?
you could just give us like a clap in front of the lens.
A good clap?
Yeah, just a clap.
My name is Michael. I am 16 years old, and I am the driver and secondary builder for my team. My team name is Blizzard, and the rest of my team is Tyler, Chase, Arian, Rahul, and Olivia.
So we'll see what Highlander.
This is one of, if not the biggest event we're going to go to this year. It has some of the top teams from around the country, around the world. The end goal for every season is to qualify for the World Championship.
This is a robotics competition. It's worlds qualifying. It has international repercussions.
It is controlled chaos at best. The sound is all over the place. The lights are all over the place. Does your robot work? What motors are running? What parts do you need? The successful teams can take that chaos and tune it out.
First thing that goes wrong right before our first match.
We're fine, we're fine in test.
Screws or loose, something's going on, but they always end up figuring it out. I have a lot of faith.
How long before they have to go down?
A couple of minutes, I think.
The robots we're competing with were built in about 2.5 weeks, which is half of what we would use as a normal build cycle. Last year, they had a terrible event here. They ended up with yelling and screaming between their own team members, and that's when they realized it was them that was holding them back.
Don't overcomplicate it, okay? It's first match of the season, keep it simple.
Last year, the break for us was communication. It's all communication.
And it was very clear that there was a lot of work that we needed to do with our team.
Outtake. All right, yeah, just pick up the ball.
I'm sure there's disagreements on stuff and how they would approach it, but they're working through that, they're navigating it, and that's critical to what you do every day in any field, but especially in robotics and manufacturing and automation.
The students that we see competing in events like VEX Robotics, they're going to really contribute to the future of robotics and automation. We need them to enter our workforce, and so we really like the outreach opportunities we have here.
Get Mikey, that control zone.
We're playing the game Pushback.
Blocks into this long goal next to me. Their alliance partner pushing and shoving on the far end of the court.
Aries almost in a position to defend, gives it up, goes for the park. OmegaBot's looking to match here at the last moment. That's
so bad. That's not control zone, is it? Don't you need at least two? Does that count?
Such a bad match.
We lost because of both the control zones. Hey, look, Tyler, balls do not matter. Control zones matter. I was telling him to match mode. We had 0 balls. I said don't overcomplicate it. You overcomplicated it.
First match, they lost a close match. The first thing they said to me when they came back to the pit is, "We get it. Our strategy was completely wrong."
The second we got out of the match, we had a conversation. We were like, okay, this is what we need to do. We do keep evolving, and like win or lose, we see things that we need to change. Everything's a learning process. That's really the whole reason we're here.
They're match loader,
Jeff Bernstein, the president of the Association for Advancing Automation. A3 is the world's largest robotics and automation trade association. Our mission is to educate companies on how to successfully apply automation. Education is extremely important to A3. Every company I talk to, they all say the same thing. We can't find enough skilled people. And so these kids, with their passion and the skills that they're learning, I think are going to have limitless opportunities in the future.
We hope that as you advance your careers, that you'll look at some of our member companies in our organization to learn more about.
If you visit a VEX Robotics event, what you'll see is students with different talents. You'll see drivers, you'll see builders, you'll see project managers who run the teams. They're working with sensors, they're programming.
There's just a huge skills gap. Our member companies are saying to us, hey, we're having trouble getting people into these fields, and so we have to start to do something about it. How do you do that without looking at tomorrow, that next generation? That's always going to be our next thing in line.